just give everyone a few minutes to actually arrive into the conference. Hey, Megan, I think we're good to go.
Good afternoon and welcome to Northeast Recycling Council's Spring 2023 conference. I'm Megan Fontes, Executive Director of NERC. We're delighted to have you join us today and learn about how we can build a diverse workforce for sustainable materials management. I would like to give a big thank you first to our conference sponsors. This event would not be possible without their generous support. And our networking sponsors, the Association of Plastic Recyclers, Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, and Paint Care. Our supporting sponsors, Resource Recycling, Waste Advantage Magazine, and WM. I invite you to visit our virtual sponsor exhibit hall to learn more about these great organizations. The link will be posted in the chat. As you know, NERC is a membership organization, and the support of our members is critical to our success. I would especially like to recognize and thank our benefactors and distinguished benefactor, as well as our sustaining advisory members. To learn more about our advisory membership program and the benefits of joining, please visit the link that has been posted in the chat. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers today and tomorrow, and you can learn more about their professional experience by visiting their speaker biographies on our website. And that will be posted in the chat shortly. Before we get started, please note that this conference is being recorded, so please be sure to keep your microphone on mute throughout the conference, whether you're joining by phone or computer. We will send a link to all of the presentations as well as the recording upon completion of our conference evaluation, which will go out after day 2 tomorrow. On another note, please make sure that your name and your organization appears on the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom picture box. So mine says Megan Fontes right now. If you have a phone number showing in place of that, please change it to your name. To do this, hover your mouse over your video inbox, select the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, select the rename option, and then enter your name and or organization. So I've mentioned the chat box several times. We'll be posting information for you there throughout the conference, so please keep an eye out. It's also where we invite you to submit your questions for Q&A sessions, which will follow all of our presentations. Now it's my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Cheryl Coleman, Senior Vice President of ISRI. Cheryl, welcome. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Megan, and welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. I want to spend a few minutes with you today talking about building a diverse workforce for sustainable materials management. First, let's talk a little bit about ISRI. ISRI is the Institute for Scrap Recycling Industries, and we are a US-based trade association that represents processors, brokers, industrial consumers, equipment manufacturers, and service providers. We have over 1,500 members in more than 40 countries, and our mission is to promote safe, economically sustainable, and environmentally responsible recycling through networking, advocacy, and education. And I'm pleased to say that we have been networking with NERC for a number of years and appreciate the relationship that we have with you. So who is the recycling industry? What is the recycling industry? Well, we're all the recycled materials industry. We provide high quality materials that are needed to make our everyday items and the essential infrastructure that we all depend on. And the picture that you see, I actually took at a grocery store recently. One of our members makes these skillets for the Lodge Company. And one of the things that we've been trying to do here at ISRI is talk more about how materials are used in these everyday products that we use. And so we have been gathering up some items so that we can share those with folks to help them understand just how widespread recycling is. We are involving an evolving industry with a lot of exciting work going on. We have artificial intelligence, we have optical sortation, and we have evolving packaging. So when I came to ISRI in October of 2020, I started ISRI's Environmental, Social, and Governance program, which most people know as ESG. Since safety is a core value of ISRI and our #1 priority, the environmental program is very well developed and organized, and everyone kind of knows where everything is about that program. Our members were also doing some great work in the social and governance areas, but we needed to organize all their work in a consistent way so that we can tell the industry's story. So we began the environmental, social, governance, or the ESG journey with our members as well as our staff here at ISRI. So let me ask you a question. What do you think of when you hear the word diversity? There are some pictures on this slide, and I'd ask you to look at them and see if all of these things come to your mind, or some of them, or one or two of them come to your mind when you see this picture. Do you think of diversity from a neural perspective, from neural diversity? People who may love differently than you, old people versus young people, people with physical challenges, people re-entering the workforce after extended absences, including incarceration? Or do you think of race? When I was growing up, I had an older relative who tried to force my cousin, who was born left-handed, to be right-handed because she considered people who were left-handed to be different. And she didn't want her child to be different. So she really tried to force him to write and do everything with his right hand when he was actually a left-handed person. He was different, he was diverse, but she had a hard time accepting that. And it took a long time for her to get comfortable with her son being different than what she considered to be normal. So what do you think of when you have a diverse workplace? What are some benefits of having a diverse workplace? The goal of recycling is to get materials into the market so that they can be manufactured into new materials, excuse me. When we understand diverse markets, this can stimulate innovation and can ultimately widen your customer base because you're offering products that appeal to a bigger market. I often tell the story of avocado toast. I'm from South Carolina originally, and when I was growing up, I didn't know what avocado toast was, and I was visiting a friend in California, and she took me to a diner and they were serving avocado toast, and I was looking for the chips, and I'm saying, it's breakfast time, why are we having avocado toast? But now, when I go to restaurants all over the country, I see avocado toast on the menu. And that is because someone allowed somebody of a different culture. They had a diverse workforce, and they brought a new menu item in that is now taken off around the country and probably around the world. When you have a diverse workforce, you have a wider pool of potential employees. And by having that wider pool of employees, you can enhance all of your employees in how they engage with others because they're starting to learn about different cultures and different lifestyles. The next slide that we're going to look at is actually about inclusion, but I think diversity and inclusion go hand in hand, because it's great to recruit a diverse workforce, but you also want to retain them. And that means that you need to include them in all aspects of your organization and conversations. So as you look at this slide, you see what people think inclusion may look like. And then from Hustle Crew's perspective and mine, what inclusion actually looks like. It's really looking to hire the best people from a diverse talent pool. It's also creating a safe space for those persons to have open discussions. And sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we say the wrong thing, but then having a conversation about them and being willing to learn from that conversation. It's also not picking out a month or a week or a day to highlight diversity, but it's doing it all year long. And it's really investing in a long-term inclusion journey that has tangible results. So, with everything going on in this world today, trying to track it all can be overwhelming. So let's take a building block approach to having a diverse workplace. Don't try to do everything at once. Take your time and build on each success, as well as those attempts that may not be as successful. Actually, we often learn more from what we perceive as failures than we do our successes. When we have a meeting or an event and something goes wrong, we sit and analyze it afterwards to see what could we have done better. But if it's a successful event, we usually just celebrate that success. So I encourage you to really look to learn, make this a learning experience, and don't try to do everything at once. One of the biggest advantages of being a part of an association is the services that we bring to our members. We provide the tools that they need to have successful companies. And today I'm going to share some of the tools we provide to our members to help them with their diversity efforts. Last year, we decided to take on what has now been called a language lexicon playbook. That's the result of these conversations. We were looking for ways to find some common language for all of the recycled materials industry to use, so that when we have conversations with regulators, with legislators, in community engagement opportunities, when working with environmental justice advocates or everyday consumers, it was painfully obvious that there were some huge communication gaps. And those gaps can actually happen within the industry. When I was at EPA, I once spent 5 months talking with someone from the bottling industry about film, and we could not get on the same page. And I finally realized that I was talking about film that goes in like your grocery bags, and she was talking about chip bags, both a film, but 2 entirely different materials. So communication gaps also happen within the industry. But the purpose of this exercise was to really help us learn what people think about the industry and how we could improve some of the thoughts that may be out there about our industry. And how do we need to change? What do we need to improve within the industry so that others understood better what a value recycled materials play in our world? So we hired Ms. Lansky and Associates, and they conducted some focus groups, and they did some surveys, and they went around the country talking with different groups. But we made sure that they looked at Census Bureau data to make sure that all groups were reflected in those conversations, because we wanted to hear from everyone. So some of the things that we found out was that the term scrap is often viewed as leftovers or less than or lower quality. When some people hear the word recyclable, they immediately think plastics and not any of the other materials that we work with. They also saw recycling as only a post-consumer activities and had no idea that post-consumer materials are a part of a larger range of materials from the commercial and industrial side. Post-consumer makes up about 20 to 30% of all recycling that happens in this country. But those that did know that there were commercial and industrial sites thought that those were places with chain link fences and dogs and where people got killed. So we knew we had some work to do. Some of the other things that we found out that the word supply chain resonated well, but circular economy did not get us higher rating, which was really surprising to us. So as a result of these conversations and these focus groups and some internal conversations, we worked with Ms. Lansky to create a guide, which is a reference tool to help our members talk with external audiences. The guide focuses on outputs rather than inputs. So where we used to talk about metric tons of valuable commodities that are being processed annually, we now talk about recycling being essential for healthy trade. We talk about recycling being essential for manufacturing new products. And we say we produce high quality materials that help keep our supply chains running. We presented the lexicon at the Bureau of International Recyclers Convention last October, and it was well received. We got unanimous support for it, and it has now been translated into 5 languages. If you're interested, please contact me or contact Marianne or someone at NERC, and we can help you get a copy. What are some other tools that we provide for our members? Well, every 2 years, we do an industry compensation and benefits survey to help our members with how they set their salary ranges and other items. We do this for over 80 different job codes related to the recycling industry, and we do it for both salaried as well as hourly employees. We also have a workforce management toolkit that we give them. And within that toolkit are some best practices. It also has some print ads, some social media ads, and other things to help them with using diverse approaches to try in their recruitment and retention efforts. And then we have a best practices document in recruiting retention, and it also has some case studies, some specific to diversity, to help them with their recruitment and retention efforts. When I came to ISRI in 2020, I was given an opportunity to do something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. And that was to develop a sustainability pathways program for what I considered non-traditional workers in the recycling world. And so I worked with our members, and several of them volunteered to serve as host companies. And what we do is we recruit students as well, and we've grown the program some, but we started out recruiting students really focused on historically Black colleges and universities and tribal colleges and universities. And they have the opportunity to get a paid fellowship, an internship, or an apprenticeship opportunity. The apprenticeships are for students who are really looking to stay in skilled areas, in skilled labor areas or skill-based careers. And they can be anywhere from a summer or a couple of years. We support them academically, as well as giving them that experiential opportunity within our companies. And we've recently expanded that to refugees. We have a person on staff who is his family is originally from Lithuania and the Ukraine area. And so he's been working for ISRI to work with our nonprofits that work with these refugees, both from Afghanistan as well as the Ukraine, to help them when they get approved to work in the United States. They must be approved to work in the United States before one of our member companies can hire them. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. We also offer internships for students, and that can be over the summer or over the course of the academic year. And it can be for current students as well as recent graduates. And then we have fellowships for students who are within 2 years of their graduation, and they work at a company for a year. And if they and the company mutually agree for them to become a permanent employee, that year as a fellowship counts as 1 year towards their tenure. And so they would be brought in for a salary at a person who's been there for a year, or their salary would be raised to a person who's been there for a year as opposed to an entry-level salary. And we've had success with fellowships for students, and for students who have historically been having to get large student loans, this really helps them from having to get student loans, and it provides our companies with students who really want to learn about the industry and really want to apply their academics in their area of interest in a career path. So it's been very successful. Now I'll talk a little bit more about the program that we have for those who have come here as refugees who are from Afghanistan, Russia, the Ukraine, and Lithuania. They have to have been approved by the US government to work in the United States. And we are currently building a toolkit because there are some things that we need to do for those persons to help them be successful in their new positions. They may be of a faith where they require a room where they can have prayers during the day. They may be persons who have children and they need opportunities for childcare. We also want to make sure that they are on the path to getting permanent residency here if that's what they so desire. But we work with these nonprofits to help them. We don't actually do that. We just work with them to have a workplace-based opportunity so that they can include that information in their application process and help them get accepted for working in the United States quicker. We also are developing a toolkit for those who are re-entering the workplace who have been formerly incarcerated. We found that persons who have been incarcerated are eager to come into the workplace and really start being able to take care of themselves and to avoid going back into the lifestyle that they had that landed them in incarceration. And so we do have a toolkit to help those persons with learning how to do things like manage their funds. Where do you go to look for housing? We work with organizations to help them also because we want them to be successful. We also are working with those who have neural disabilities, and I don't like the word disability, so I call it different abilities, neural abilities. And those persons may have ADHD, they may be dyslexic, they may have autism, but that doesn't mean that they're not capable of functioning and having a good career in the recycled materials industry. So we want to give them opportunities to work also. So we're really expanding the pool, like you saw on that other side, to give as many people as possible an opportunity to be self-sufficient, to be self-sustaining, and also to have a good paying job and help the company be successful. So another tool that we've provided for our students, or not just students, is a job series film to help them learn about careers in the recycling industry. In that, we have several of our ISRI staff as well as our member companies who are talking about the innovative careers in the industry. And Abigail, we're going to play the clip about that series now, if you don't mind. It's a short clip.
What do you want to be when you grow up? It's a question kids have been asked for generations. And now, with innovation and tech adoption at an all-time high, it's getting more difficult to answer. We're diving into our modern workplaces to see how the careers of the past are evolving into the jobs of tomorrow. Recycling is an industry that touches almost every aspect of our everyday lives. In the US, household recycling accounts for well under 20% of recycled materials.
People connect more with that tiny sliver of residential recycling. It's gotten a lot of attention, and it should. It should. But it's a small piece of the pie.
But the truth is that recycling is so much more than that. It touches every part of our lives. Recycling is, in the US alone, is about a $117 billion industry. And we're sourcing recycled materials from every part of the economy.
With more technological innovations being used, new skill sets are required for the workers.
We're relying more and more on those with technical backgrounds and understanding. There's been more awareness about recycling there and more attention paid to it. We're also seeing a lot more interest in the industry, which is just very exciting for me.
Recycling companies are continuously reviewing their processes to see how they can become more efficient. In some cases, that means researching innovations like artificial intelligence.
There's always a team looking at how do we innovate further. AI, of course, is one of the major new ways of running equipment, making decisions. So absolutely, there will be people looking at that.
An industry that is far-reaching, advancing with technology, and meeting new challenges with innovative techniques. It seems like there's a lot more to recycling than most of us thought, and a lot of potential for growth.
It's a particularly exciting time in the industry because the growing awareness of the importance of recycling and its role in us moving towards a net zero in terms of climate change impacts, as well as meeting the needs of decarbonization. So as you think about all the changes that are occurring in the global economy and in manufacturing, moving us towards those goals.
To learn more, check out the full episode from the amazing docuseries, Jobs of Tomorrow.
So we want people to know that recycling is an exciting place to be. The recycled materials industry is an exciting place to be. So we're trying to use various forms of media and opportunities to tell our story, to tell others about the materials that are evolving, and that recycling is a place that they can have an exciting life, or they can participate in just by doing recycling in their homes. So with that, I want to encourage all of you to look at the diversity in your organization and look at it as a gift to make the recycled industry so much better. I'm looking forward to hearing about the successful programs that you are doing in your organizations, because after all, there's diversity in recycled materials. And we want diversity in those that work with those materials. So I want to thank you so much. We have some time for questions. I believe Megan is going to share any questions that she got in the chat box. And Megan, I apologize, I probably finished a little sooner than we thought, but.
No, it's great to be on time. Thank you so much. That was really, really amazing to learn more about ISRI's programs related to diversity and inclusion in both recruitment, retainment, promotion. And I think, we're we're looking forward to continuing the discussion around a lot of these throughout today and tomorrow. Really quick, before we jump into Q&A, I do want to apologize for, it seems to be that we had a technical glitch here today in our registration process. So if you could just take a second and look at your name and how it shows up. If you are a Fields Jackson, please change your name to what it reflects, because we should only have one Fields Jackson in here, and we have quite a lot more. And so again, I apologize, because that was an error I think that we played on part here. So okay, so here's our first question. Will the lexicon playbook be updated regularly to incorporate learnings over time and new ideas?
So it will be, and really it's going to be an online tool so that we can do those updates more quickly. But the challenge for us now, we were not anticipating so many countries wanting to translate it into their language. And so it's going to involve a lot of coordination with other countries. So we're excited about that. It's already been translated into 5 different languages, and we're really excited about that. But we want to keep this going. And so, yes, we will be updating it.
Thank you. So what I was just curious myself, you have such a diverse, talk about diversity, you have such a diverse types of programs for the career paths. Do you know by chance what the hiring rate is for any of those, the internship program or apprenticeship program?
So actually those just started last year. And I was kind of overwhelmed because we got, within 3 months, we had 135 applications, and that was really amazing to me for a program that was just getting launched. And so we probably missed some of them because in 3 months, it was just me at that time. I was the only person doing it, and I just couldn't get through everything, but the interest was there. And since it's opened up this year in January, we're still getting those applications. And what we do is we interview them and really try to make sure that this is something that they're going to commit to, because our members are in this, it's a business for them. And so we don't want to send someone there who's not going to be committed. So it does take some time to get them through the process, but we've been successful so far. And I'm also pleased to say we got our first Ukrainian family last week, and that just started. So we got our first Ukrainian family. They're in Canada. We've matched them up with one of our Canadian companies that has a Canadian operation, and they're now going through that process. So just to be able to help people who are coming here and really looking to build a life for their families is very well rewarding.
That's amazing. And really, really successful. Exciting to see that grow.
Yeah.
So you said to take a building block approach rather than doing everything at once. What should be the first step towards a diverse workforce?
So I think really helping your current staff understand what this means, because we don't want someone entering who may be different to come in and feel like they're either a token or they just hired you because you're different. That we have looked at the pool, we looked at a diverse pool, and we hired the best candidate. And best can mean different things. There could be someone who has an excellent skill set. They don't interact well with people. And if you're in a job where you need to interact with people, we need you to be able to do that. And so we have to look from a more well-rounded perspective to really find people who can come in and be a part, but also that we can learn from each other, that when they come into our organization, that we can learn from them and they can also learn from us. So I think starting within your organization to prepare them that you are going to launch this and why you're doing it. And then once you get there, start with one thing. Don't be like me, who started several things at one time, hoping one would catch on, and they all kind of caught on. But start small and let that build. And as you build it, then you kind of know where your company is going. But you also need to know which direction your company is going. Because, for example, I had a conversation with someone about getting truck drivers with CDLs. And he said to me, well, I'm only going to need them a few years because soon I'm going to have a self-driving truck. And I said, well, I don't think so. You're still going to need a person in that truck. And he said, no, I'm not. I said, well, let me ask you a question. What's the first thing you do when your computer acts up? He said, I reboot it. I said, do you really want a truck rebooting itself, going 80 miles down the road? You want someone in there that can take control to be able to help that truck stay on track and not cause an accident. So as you're looking to diverse your operations, look at the people you're bringing in and help them build the skill set so that they can stay with you. And they're a CDL driver today, but they also have those IT skills to be able to manage that truck as you bring in more technology.
Wow, that's quite an example. I really like that. So we're getting a lot. I'm just gonna try to stay on track, and then I'll come back to some others. Would you start by looking at your existing employee base to see where you're currently diverse?
I would, and I think it depends. It depends on what your needs are, really. It really depends on what your needs are. But yes, I think that is a great place to start and probably the best place to start. But I think it also depends on the organization. So for example, if you are looking to build out your IT section, you certainly want to bring diversity into that IT section, but don't not build it up because you're waiting till you find enough candidates. Really, you have to balance that. You have to balance your needs of your organization with who is available, because there are labor shortages out there. There really are labor shortages. But, you know, just like I was sharing with you beforehand, I'm now, for the first time in my life, managing people who are 100% remote. To me, that's diversity, because I didn't do that 10, 15 years ago. We had some when I was with EPA, but not as many as we have now. And it's a totally different management style, because before I would forget they were there sometimes or just not include them in things. And so I really had to change how I approach things. So it's a learning experience for everyone.
Definitely. Does your company fund the paid internships, or do you have funding sources like grants to help with that?
So the member companies fund them, but for the apprenticeship programs, you can get certified in a state, and there are some grant funds available for that, but our members pay them.
Thank you. Can you say a few words about the international recycling community?
So we belong to the Bureau of International Recyclers, and they are recycling associations just like ISRI that are around the world. There's Europe, well, they're actually two in Europe, but there's Europe, who's the primary member of BIR, or the Bureau of International Recyclers. And I'll actually be going to Amsterdam in May for their semi-annual meeting. They have 2 meetings a year. The last one was in Dubai, so they have them around the world. And we come together to really talk about recycling challenges that we're all facing. And with the recent trade conversations that have been very energetic, we've had some lively discussions over the last few months.
That's great. So we have someone who said, I appreciate that you said that it's okay to make mistakes. Are there any mistakes that you made in this journey that you learned from and would share with us?
Yes, I can tell you one that I made a couple of months ago. I was in Alabama in November, and I was getting ready to fly back here. I went down there to talk about diversity. And the cab driver, I was in Mobile, Alabama, and I had to schedule my cab very early in the morning. So I scheduled the cab, And when he got there, he said, "Do you mind if we pick up another passenger?" And I said, "No, I just 4 o'clock in the morning. I know how difficult it is." We got to the other hotel and we saw this luggage, but there was no person. And we kept hearing someone say, "Oh," and we didn't see anyone. So finally he got out of the cab and it was a small person. And so he got in the car and we were talking and he said to me, "So what jobs are there for me in the recycling industry?" And I could not think of a single job for a small person in the recycling industry because he wanted to work on the floor. And I really could not, I was speechless, and I told him I was embarrassed because here I am telling others that they should have a diverse workforce. And he's asking me about this. And he was a referee for the midget WWE, which I didn't even know existed, but that was how he phrased it. And I told him, I said, "I'm very embarrassed that I'm not able to think of anything at this moment." Since then, people have given me several ideas. But yes, that was a huge mistake I made. And I have not forgotten.
Wow. Wow. How do you cultivate diversity beyond the entry level?
How do you cultivate diversity? I think a lot of it comes from talking to people. And I say that because we had some folks here at ISRI who did that 23andMe genetic testing. And we had one staff person who identifies as Euro white who found out that he had some Nigerian blood in him. And we have a staff person here who is from Nigeria. So they actually formed a connection and they learned about each other and they shared some recipes and some foods. And as he looked back into his family history, he learned more about himself and some family members that he never knew about. And now he's on every platform he can get on to really learn more about himself. So I think having people have opportunities to interact with each other and learn that at the end of the day, we really aren't as different as we think. And those differences that we possess can help us all be better people in the long run.
Wow. How were the decisions made to come up with the steps that you've implemented at ISRI to become more inclusive?
So I think ISRI has always been a diverse organization, but I will say that the events that happened right after the George Floyd tragedy highlighted the need for us to have more in-depth conversations. And I wasn't at ISRI at the time of that. I had some personal experience with my own children going through some challenges at that time so I was very raw for me at the time. And so when I got here, ISRI was in the midst of having some diversity conversations that helped me with my transition in, because it allowed me to express some of the frustration, the anger, and the pain that I had felt as I had a 97-year-old aunt who was pulled out of a car and handcuffed and thrown up against a car. And I had to deal with that, but I got into a safe place here and I was able to talk through that with them. And so ISRI really dove in and allowed people to express their anger, their frustration, and some who just didn't understand why it was a problem. And those all conversations, and that is okay. Being willing to say that and share that, and then hear from others why it is a problem, gave them a better understanding. Did it change their mind? I don't know. But at least they had an opportunity. They felt safe enough to express who they were. And that's the environment that we want, for people to feel safe enough to express who they are and not be judged about it.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Well, I'm glad to hear that that was something that they were, already embarking upon a bit too.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important element in, creating an inclusive culture, so that you're not just looking at recruitment strategy, but you're also looking at, the promotion of diverse employees at the company?
So I think it's incorporating it as one of your principles. So when I came into this position, one of the first things I did was to create certain principles that I wanted to adhere by. And one of them, in working with our other senior staff members, we made a commitment that we were going to deliberately make sure that we were being inclusive, that we were looking past some of our own biases, and really being willing to look at diversity from a different perspective. For example, I like to hire people who are not like me, because then I feel like I'm getting a more complete picture. I'm getting the total picture. But then I had to realize that just because someone thinks like me, they may still have some differences that can contribute to success. So I had to change even my own mental platform to say, I need to look at everybody and not just look for someone to fill in gaps, but someone who makes us complete.
Definitely. Another question I have is about, the relationship between formal training and making that internal commitment, and, what maybe cadence is important for training, if you even recommend that that's an important piece.
So I think training is important. As a matter of fact, I'm really on a journey now to understand environmental justice better. And I say that because I want to make sure that when we have those conversations, that our members feel like they are a part of the conversation and not the topic of the conversation. And so how do you create an environment where people feel comfortable enough to bring you to the table, but also include you in the conversations at the table where you're being talked with and not talked at? And that goes for our members, and it also goes for the communities in which we are engaging. So it's really, again, it's not taking some things personal, but taking them personally, where you are really putting yourself in a position to be open to hearing things that you may not want to hear, things that you may have difficulty hearing, things that you weren't even aware of, and having an open mind of learning when you are engaging in that. And I think the same thing happens within an organization. As I said, we had people who didn't understand what the big deal was about some things. And so respecting that and starting there, really respecting that and starting there and forming those relationships so that you can then have the more difficult conversations, because it really helps to understand each other first before you start tackling the more difficult parts of a conversation, because then you can have, you've got that foundation of trust, however limited it is, that has been established.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Couple more questions and then we will have to close the session. Do you have any thoughts on the role that a DEI committee can have in a small, mid-sized business? Any recommendations on what that group should strive for and how that group can make a real impact?
I think the group should strive to understand each other first. And then the company needs to define what diversity means for them. Because there may be companies that have some jobs that it's not possible for you to hire someone who has a diverse component about them. And so if that is the case, then don't beat yourself up about it, but look at those ways that you can be more diverse, that where you can be more diverse. And again, I say start small. And I've learned that the hard way, really start small, because what I did was I put out a lot of feelers thinking that one or two would take. and they all took, and then I was not enough to be able to follow through on it. And I feel like I probably disappointed some people as a result of that. So start small and tackle what you can. And then at the end of the day, be happy with yourself. Because my favorite quote is from Sidney Poitier: the best energy spent is energy spent in self-improvement. Because it's only when we improve ourselves that we can improve the lives of those we touch. So improve yourself, and then you will improve the lives of those you touch.
Thank you. I think that's great to end on that note. So thank you again, Cheryl, so much for joining us. And, we look forward to getting this presentation out as well to all of you following the event.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl and Megan. We're going to move into our next session. Ann Bajor, Materials Management Supervisor with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, will moderate. Ann, I'd like to invite you and the speakers to show yourselves. Thank you. And you're on mute.
Hi,
There you go.
everyone. Yeah. Welcome. Thanks for being here this afternoon. So this session will explore strategies and tools for fostering an inclusive recruitment and hiring process, including how to attract a diverse group of applicants. So to me, diversity and inclusion in the workplace means that your staff consists of individuals who feel comfortable and are encouraged to bring new and different perspectives and their backgrounds to the table, which can often lead to more fun and more interesting and higher quality outcomes. So we have 3 speakers today who will share their perspectives on this topic, and we hope you will also share your experiences and your ideas and thoughts as well. So today we have Jose Luis Ramos, who is the Bilingual Sustainable Business Program Coordinator for the City of Longmont in Colorado. And then we also have Cornell Wright, who's the Managing Consultant of the Parker Wright Group. And then joining him from the Parker Wright Group is John Carroll, who is Director of Strategy. And we're going to start with John, and he's going to introduce us to a new tool called XLeap. So we're going to kind of take a leap in trying this new tool. It allows attendees to remain anonymous when commenting and asking questions. And so it helps promote a safe environment for collaboration. So John's going to introduce you to XLeap and explain how we'll use the tool instead of the chat function in Zoom.
Great.
And I just want, quickly.
Please go ahead.
Is Jose Luis here? Because I don't see him yet.
Has not joined us yet, so I'm wondering if he's having trouble accessing the internet from Spain.
Uh-oh, okay.
So I've reached out to him. Hopefully
Great.
he will respond.
Okay. Great, thanks. John, you're welcome to introduce it to the
Great.
now.
And Cheryl gave me a great introduction. The XLeap platform we're going to be utilizing today actually used it successfully on an environmental justice effort with the Fort Valley University, the HBCU, to clean up the 11th worst hazardous waste site in the country. We were able to bring together the faith-based community, the environmental justice community, the EPA, and the HBCUs to figure out how to create the safe environment for people to have conversations they needed to have. The result is a showcase now for cleanup. So I just wanted to just piggyback on Cheryl's discussion of the importance of environmental justice as another area to look into, but where we've successfully used this kind of technology. And so if everybody could, you should see in the chat, and I'm replacing it here just in case you don't, a link. If you click on it, you'll be able to come right into a warm-up activity that is actually one that we really want to get your input on. So everybody, if you could, just click on that link, and I'll see as everybody comes on in and joins the session. Okay, it looks like we have a good number already coming in. think we have over 60 in the session, so I'm watching that count. Oh, we already have somebody already typed in, and you should see your idea here at the very bottom, or a blue circle with a white plus. Click that and go ahead and answer the question, where should we hold the next conference? So take this seriously, have a little fun with it. We're just getting everybody used to typing in, and you'll notice everything's anonymous. So that's a key thing here, to allow people the freedom to say what you really think. And the next thing I wanted you to know, if you wanted to make a comment on somebody who said virtual, you can click on the comment bubble and just say, this could be interesting, make a comment. And you'll notice that that comment bubble now turned blue, which gives us a visual cue. We already see some people using the green dots for the likes to drag them and let them go to see what people say. So I see somebody about virtual, convenient. So we're seeing a lot of that already. So just taking a couple of seconds here to get started. And then I just wanted to see, have we found Jose Luis yet? If not, we might need to
Yes.
switch to where we go next after this warm up, to where we go to Cornell.
John, Jose Luis is here.
Great. Well, I'm just going to do a quick sort to see where the conference will be. And then Jose Luis will then bring your presentation up. So it looks like virtual was a recommendation, and others got some green dots as well. Folks, that was just the introduction to anonymous brainstorming, discussion, and even prioritization very rapidly. But from here, I'm going to switch us over and open up.
John,
Please,
can you
any
just
questions?
give people maybe a little more, how do they do the likes or?
Oh, if you could, in the upper left, there's 3 green likes. I'm gonna unsort things so everybody can do that again. And you should see, just let me turn back on. I was going too quickly there. Thanks for slowing me down. In the upper left, now some other people are starting to drag them and let go. And use your mouse and the cursor. Oh, we're getting a lot more likes now. Great. And as I said, you can also make comments. And tell you what, there's 2 virtual, so I'm going to go ahead and ask permission to merge them, which we can do. Everybody says yes, they're identical. So that's now up to 11 green dots. All the way down at the bottom, I see in the Northeast at a recycling facility, great idea.
Hi, Jose Luis. Yes.
So is everybody more comfortable now on how this technology works? We're going to use it in a similar capacity during Jose Luis's presentation and then Cornell's presentation, so that people can ask, make comments, add their own personal experiences as the presenters go through their decks. Are we good to go?
Great.
Great. Then I'm going to just bring us in. And you'll see your screen will change. And now you have the first slide, and I'm going to toss it over to Jose Luis. And just so you know, if you do wish, in the far right, in the bottom, you have a blue circle with a white plus. If something comes up and you want to make a comment, you are welcome to.
So Jose Luis, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent.
Okay. I'm gonna get started then. Hello, everybody. My name is Jose Luis Ramos, my last name. Thank you for attending. I will be talking today about hiring practices and how applying equity and inclusion during the hiring processes, you can get a better more options in general. That's how I will put it on. I'm the bilingual business sustainability coordinator for the city of Longmont. So can you do the next slide, please, for me?
Very good. Just a moment.
Sure. Thank you. All right. So on the first slide, the way that I see the hiring practices for when you're trying to reach out to other communities that are typically underserved and underrepresented. The way that I see it is, for me, is a framework. You first start with the hiring process, then you provide support and network for that for those candidates, and at the end you do mentorship and promotion for these candidates. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about the hiring process. The other two steps, they will be presented in the next couple of days by other people that will be focusing on that. My goal today is to show you and to kind of give you an idea some of the experiences that I had in terms of hiring and also being hired by different companies. As a Latino, it's been kind of a difficult process for me. Sometimes, you know, it's a little difficult for me to get access to some of the jobs, and that's what we're going to be talking today about. So the first slide that I have here, I have a small image that is showing equity as a guiding principle. We have the two images that you see there, they're divided by a line. On the left side, we had equity as a guiding principle. We have the equal, what it means to be equal. And the way that this image is represented, it's you provide equal opportunity. You have exactly the same box for those three kids that you see on the left side. In that box, the fence has the same height. The kids are different heights. So if you provide the same size boxes, there's going to be a problem for some of the shorter kids. Now, what it means to be equitable in this sense right here on this image, you see the three kids on the right side. They are the same kids, different heights too. But you know, depending on what you provide for them to have that access to the view, it's what's going to determine how well they're going to see that. Okay, so it's just a way to show you what the difference between equity and equal and equitable. Okay, so in my case, the way that I will see it, if I'm going to apply for a job and I'm a bilingual specialist, which is my case. When I apply for a job, if you let's say that somebody that you want to hire, it's a bilingual person, you put this application in English for everybody, right, to get access. If I'm in the Latino community and I don't have access to a computer, and you post your application online, you know, it's going to be, because of the digital gap, it's going to be a little difficult for me to reach out to that job application, because I don't have the means, I don't have the medium to be able to do that. A way for me to be competitive at this point will be, you know, maybe you have other media to get access to so that I can get access to that application. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so what I'm going to be talking today is the first step is experience versus education. Okay, if you're going to hire a candidate and you're trying to focus on Latinos, in my case, I'm a Latino applicant, and you want to reach out to me, what you need to determine is the application. When you put it up, if you say, you know, a bachelor's degree is required or a master's degree is required, you have to start wondering about that. Is it really required? Is it really what you're looking for? do you really need a title? Do you need a piece of paper, or do you need the experience of that person that you're trying to hire? Okay, that's the first step. When you set up to hire somebody from a different community, you have to start thinking about whether that degree is really required. Okay, in this case, you have to think about different options. I'll give you my example. I did have, when I got hired by the city of Longmont, and before that, I used to work for a different city. The first time that I was hired by them, I did have my degree. I'm a software engineer. I have my degree, but when the job interview and the job position that I was applying to had nothing to do with my degree. And the reason why I got that job is because I had the experience to do what I'm doing today. My specialty is small businesses. I used to be a business owner. I used to work in construction before. I used to be an educator. So there is different job job traits that I have in my bag. That was the one that those were the ones that I was offering to this organization, and not what I went to school for, because it was completely different. And if I wouldn't have that title on that first job that I got, if I wouldn't have that title, I was not going to be hired, and all the talent that I brought to this place was going to be wasted, because there is not, with that requirement, I couldn't even apply for that job. Okay. Now, for me, and for to find people like me are out there, you're looking for, when you put the job application and you talk about whether a bilingual, you set up your application, and then you say, okay, so we want somebody that's bilingual. If you do really want somebody that is bilingual, make sure that you do understand the difference between requiring a bilingual person or a bilingual person recommended. Okay, there is a huge difference there. My experience has been, as I'm talking to, when I am part of a hiring team, if we only put recommended, bilingual recommended, what's going to happen is 90% of people that are going to apply are going to be mainly, monolingual, English only speaking, and some of them will speak other languages, and some will not speak the language that you're looking for really well. But if you do, require, and then you specify Spanish speaking required, then that's another story, because now you're going to start getting a different kind of candidate that you're going to be able to focus on that. Now, if you go the extra step to say, I'm going to require a bilingual speaking, in my case, a Spanish speaking bilingual person, then a recommendation that I will do is, okay, bilingual required. Well, let's set up our application in Spanish too. Okay, let's put it online, English and Spanish version. And some of the examples that I used before to explain the reason why is we Latinos, in our case, we are very family oriented. And if I'm a young, a young person and that is looking for a job, typically, I don't have the confidence to apply for all the jobs that I look around. But then my parent, my sister, my brother, when they see the bilingual materials, if my parents are monolingual, they only speak Spanish, and they can read the application, they help me go through that process. They can be my support team while I'm doing, because sometimes I'm not going to feel confident enough to apply. But if I get the family to look at the application, I will be encouraged by them. So that's another reason why it's important to have bilingual materials when you put that. The second thing that you have to pay attention to is the promotion channels. Okay, so typically what you do is you put your application, you're looking for a candidate, and you just post it online, right? You set up your website and it's there, and whoever gets access to that website or all the channels that you use, you're gonna get those candidates from those channels. But guess what? Some of the candidates, if you remember, we're talking about bilingual people, Spanish speakers in this case. Sorry. Some of the candidates that you're gonna get, that you need, they're not gonna get access to these channels. We Latinos use other channels. We use WhatsApp, we use Facebook. We also sometimes we get our information via different channels, like neighbors, people that we know of. Since we are bilingual, we speak Spanish, so we get that kind of information from different access. So let's start thinking more broadly about how do we reach out to these specific candidates. Okay, and if you're trying to get somebody, please make sure that that is bilingual. Make sure that you pay a really good salary. Okay, being bilingual is an extra skill that you're not gonna get everywhere. So if you want to attract good candidates, offer a little extra. Some places where I worked before, they offer at least $1 or $2 an hour just because of the fact that you're bilingual, or they give you an extra bump up because you're bilingual. Okay, now let's talk about the job description. Can you go to the next slide, please? This right here, it's one of the description in Colorado, that it's a city that put this description on the job at the bottom of the job description. They have all the requirements. They specify, we want this kind of a person. We want, these are the kind of the duties that this person is gonna perform and things like that. They go through the whole process, and at the bottom they put this up, and I love this. And this specific one is the one that they encouraged me to apply for the job when I was looking for a job before the pandemic. It says that studies have shown that women and people of color are less likely to apply for jobs unless they believe they can perform every job description task. And that is true. That is true, because sometimes we think the way that we look at the job positions, we start looking at this. Oh, they require this, they require that, they require this, and then we get to a point where there is one little point that we don't feel like we are competent enough in that, and we typically say, I'm not going to apply because this is not for me. And this happens to all of us. And as they say, the studies show that women in underserved communities are typically like that. We just have that, we don't have the confidence to go and apply for that. But if we see this kind of signage there, if we see that they can make an exception, if you have the experience, if you have the knowledge that but not the title in this case, right? So they can make the exception. If you see that they're open enough to be able for you to apply, you will get better candidates. Okay, so think about the description. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please?
Jose Luis, you did get a couple of comments here before we go on.
Yeah. Comments. It says this is a great way to let people know companies is included. It is. It really truly is. And as I said before, this is what encouraged me to apply for that job. I never worked in government before, and this was the first time that I was applying. But I had all this experience, and guess what? All my software engineering experience, I'm not using any of that. I'm using all kinds of things that I learned before my degree. Okay. This could be enhanced by saying the employer is open to teaching, training the right candidate. Is perfect? Yeah, it is. It is a really good way for you to start encouraging other people to apply. So yeah, great. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so here are some of the things that that you can miss. Okay, if you don't if you don't start opening your job positions, your job applications. Okay. I have 3 examples. One of them I already talked a little bit about it. Is my experience, my own experience. As I said before, I started working. I applied for this position, and I went in thinking that it was going to be difficult for me to get the job, and I was the best candidate. I was hired immediately after I went through the interview. Everybody was so excited about all my knowledge. I had a restaurant for 11 years, and my job that I was applying for was to be a business specialist. So during the pandemic, I had to go out to the community and offer resources, how to apply for the PPP loans, all of those things that people didn't understand. And I was able to go and talk to them in Spanish, to these businesses. So when I came into the city with my experience, they look at me, and it was exactly what they were looking for. I was able to make connections during that time. I was able to do so many things during the pandemic because of my experience, not because of my degree. So if I wouldn't have that degree, all my experience was going to be wasted, and the city was going to be missing that chance to get somebody that can perform the job. I worked for that city 2 years, and I did extremely well in terms of building rapport, building connections, making this a more dynamic business community at that specific city. Now, another example that I witnessed right here in Northern Colorado was one of the counties in Northern Colorado. During the pandemic, they were looking for a person that was experienced in working with the community because they wanted to reach out the Latino community, and they didn't have all the different ways to connect with them because they wanted to push the vaccinations during that time frame. Okay, so what they did is they decided to hire this person and the requirement for that person was no degree required, and they only wanted somebody that knew the community. They knew how to interact with the community. That was the main requirement. And guess what? They also say, no, only Spanish speaking is okay. So they were not requiring English in the USA. They were not requiring English. They only wanted one person that spoke Spanish because they desperately wanted to reach out to this community. They hired this person that didn't speak English. She came in. She immediately went to the community and started to make all these things around the Latino community, getting people vaccinated. She and I and a couple of other people partnered together, and we were able to reach thousands of Latinos and got them to get vaccinated during that time frame. So it was what it was required for the job. So they went the extra mile to be able to find the right candidate, and they did. And she's still working there, even though the pandemic, is behind us right now. At least that's what we think. She's still working there, and she's making great things at that place. Finally, I have the name who did here. This is just a name that I put in, but I have witnessed at least 2 people that apply for a job. I was part of the interviewing team, and who did was apply for this job. When we went through the first 2 interviews, that was on the phone, and also one virtual interview. After the second round, she was the best candidate. Everybody in the team loved her, and we knew that she was going to get the job because she was the best candidate by far. So we set up 3 candidates to come for the last interview, in-person interview. And we were sure that she was going to show up and she was going to write just like she did during the interviews, virtual interviews. She came in, and when she was about to walk into the doors of the city, it was a government office. She stopped there and she just turned around and left the building. She didn't have the courage to cross that door. And the reason why I found out a couple of weeks later is that she got scared. She was at a point where crossing those doors is the unknown, is the government. She didn't trust the government. She was kind of scared about going in and applying. And the reason why she mentioned that to me later was that she got scared because she had a job that was not a good paying job, but it was a steady job that she could keep. And she was afraid that if she would apply for this, if she would go into this interview and got the job, she was afraid that she was going to get fired in a couple of months, she said, and I didn't want to do that because now I don't have my job that is a steady job. And this new one, they're going to fire me from that because I'm not competent enough to do it. And it was a shame because she was the best candidate and she left. She couldn't cross that door and there was nothing we can do. So that is some of the things that we can miss. My recommendation here to the city that I was working for, it was that why don't we do the next round of interviews on a different kind of job where we were looking for a similar candidate? Why don't we do it at the local library rather than the government office? It was just an idea, and that would make a big difference. That would make a big difference with that person. So the question is that, who do you really want to reach? If you want to reach the Latino community, if you want to reach a bilingual person, if you want to reach that, think about it. And those are the kind of things that we have to put in perspective so that we can make the right decision. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, taking the risk. If you decide that you want to go through that process, then let's start taking the risk. The steps to take the risk, we need to do intentional cultural marketing. Let's translate if you want a Spanish speaker, a bilingual Spanish speaker, then let's translate the materials. Let's have it in their language too. Let's provide a support system for the candidates that start applying. I don't know. I think, it might be some kind of some of the things that I came out with in terms of how do we provide that support system was maybe we can hire, get somebody from a different team to kind of host a visit to the city so that they can start losing their fear, they can start feeling more comfortable, things like that, and equitable pay for sure. Okay, potential benefits. You might be missing a lot of hidden talents. Some of the people that I met during the pandemic when I was working with the Latino community, there is a lot of people out there that are educators, that are doctors, that are engineers, that are working for other, low-paying jobs, and they have all this talent that you can use, all this experience that can be a great benefit for your organization, and that will give you the diverse workforce that you're looking for. So, can we go to the next slide, please?
We did just get a comment in, Jose
Okay.
Luis.
Yes. Would you consider an affinity group part of the support system that you reference in the hiring process? Well, I'm assuming that the affinity group means this. Okay, so I'm gonna give you my something that I experienced when I graduated from college. I graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo as a software engineer. HP wanted me to, they wanted to hire me. So they invited me to go to Boise, Idaho, okay? So that I could interview with the printing division in Boise. I went there with my wife, and guess what they did? They got a few, Boise, Idaho, they only had like 20 Latinos in the whole city. So they got 3 of those work for HP. So they got those 3 employees with their families to host an evening with us, my wife and I, so that we can feel comfortable and did that. And that was helpful because we were able to talk to them. We saw each other, we recognized each other on there because they were Latinos too. And so it was kind of a nice thing to do. The problem was that in our case, okay, I was there with my wife, and that Sunday, we didn't know a lot about Boise, and we were there. And then that Sunday, when we were at the hotel, we got this newspaper, and the newspaper had a big article about this city called Coeur d'Alene, I think is the name of the city in Boise. And they were gonna do some kind of a extremist right parade or something like that. And my wife immediately said, no, we're not going to stay here. So it was one of those things. Yes, it helps a lot, but it also has to do with the environment where you're bringing these candidates in. So, but yeah, that helps. It helps a lot. So anyway, thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I hope that you start thinking about taking that little risk and going to the one extra step. Try to get this diverse pool. It's going to make a huge difference. It's going to make a big difference for your organization as you get diversity integrated into your organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose Luis. We're glad you could make it. You're in Spain right now still, correct?
Yes, I am.
Great.
I'm in Seville at the moment, so thank you.
Well, we are going to switch over to Cornell's presentation, and just want to remind you that instead of putting questions in the chat, we're going to use the XLEAP program, and you're welcome to put in comments while Cornell's speaking, or at the end we'll have time for question and answer. So Cornell.
Yes.
Are you with us? Great.
I'm with you. Okay,
right.
Great. Thank you very much. And as you've had a chance to meet John, as one of my colleagues earlier, working with the XLEAP program, we use that in our facilitation and activity market rate group, and especially within our DE&I activities and work. And so, John, if you would scroll me to the next slide. Part of our work, we've identified with clients over a period of time that there are hiring diversity concerns. I'll share with you 3 of them and perhaps some resolutions and some ideas in order to address them moving forward. You may have some of the same ones. The first one is unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is basically where we believe that we already know what we want to accept or we want to understand. And I just that many of you have heard about the television program, The Voice. Well, The Voice is a great model for hiring diversity and eliminating the exposure to unconscious bias. Because when you think about it, for those of you who hadn't had a chance to see the program, a person is singing, and the judges are actually turned away from the person and can't see them, but they can hear them. Because at that point in time, what they're doing is they're judging on the voice, not on how the person looks, not on stature, not on any of those other things that we give us individuals and signals, but just on the voice. And that's perhaps a beautiful way for it to happen. The other portion is, so as you look at that, there are people who have started to make use of this sort of approach, and that's called blind auditions. In fact, the Metropolitan Opera in New York has an annual competition in which they provide blind auditions across the country in order to identify new operatic talent. They also use blind auditions with regards to developing new roles for the various play performances they're going to have moving forward, in which the candidates come in, they actually sing behind a screen, and then those who are judging or evaluating are on the other side of the screen, hear the performer, and then make their determination on that. Additionally, blind auditions have been used for a number of orchestras around the world, and there's a link providing information that one of our colleagues, Karen Whitney, has presented for us, in which they've found that the number of female orchestra performers has increased based upon the blind audition approach. And so I would suggest to you that aspect of however you are looking at your screening or opportunity, take some of the comments or cues from blind auditioning in order to see where that would help you help to identify and qualify more diverse hiring candidates. Next slide, please. The other question as you start to look at, and people that we've worked with have said, well, I need specific talent. The good news, bad news is that now in the global world, there's talent around the world, and pretty much whatever talent you're looking for can in fact be sourced from around the world. I use the example here of the World Baseball Classic and the winning teams of that classic, which has been over a period of time. If you look at that list very quickly, we'll say the United States won once. In the other years, the United States didn't place in the top 3. Just as an indication, using baseball as a model here, it shows that talent is in fact universal, if you will, global. That talent also is finding our way into all the business aspects we're looking at, because I used to work for IBM years ago, and we found that the talent that we could find in India was extremely capable, and as capable as in some of the facilities within the United States, and as a result, moved a lot of the facilities and capabilities from the United States to India. So that talent is actually a global capability at this point in time. So you start to keep that in mind as you're looking at your diversity of your workforce and where you might be able to find those persons. So if I go to the next chart, bring it a little closer to home, though, from a global perspective down to something more local. An example that, and that is of where do I find the talent that I'm looking for a particular opportunity. One example is that I worked with the chair of the math department at West Point in 2013. At that point in time, they were looking for, and his objective was to create a diversity in the math department, that he wanted to have more math professors of color than in HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And he was successful in doing that. But keep in mind that West Point is in fact an engineering school, and the math department has to be strong in order to provide the capabilities of providing all those engineers with the math bases that they need to move forward, right? Aside from the military component, of course. So you start looking at that and you're saying, okay, so how did he do that? Well, he went to where the math majors were coming out. He went to other math departments. He went to another colleges and universities in which the PhDs were being granted to math majors, and he did some work outside the United States. And the result was the end result, as we see here, is that he was able to have more Black faculty as a percentage at West Point than in historically Black colleges and universities. Oh, the other component is that one of our research director, Karen Whitney, put together for us is looking at March was Women's History Month. And you start looking at, there's an article there that you can reference as well, looking at the number of positions that women are starting to occupy. In fact, basically every position women are starting to occupy. And so it just starts to bring out the question that this industry is not unique and certainly can absorb all the female talent that's out there and is available to it. The other thing I'd like to ask you to consider looking forward and starting to create your workforce is, for years I was a member of an adjunct faculty at a community college. In most community colleges, there's a dean position similar to the one we had called outreach services. The responsibility of that dean is to reach out to organizations like yours in order to identify pathways for their students, educational requirements, any skill sets required, and actually job opportunities and perhaps even internship. I know it was earlier in the conversation that Ms. Coleman discussed a number of ways in which to identify talent and bring in with internships and various aspects, which all sound really good. And I would suggest that there's more opportunity out there for other creative ways of addressing it and starting to bring in new talent into your organization. Certainly, as you can recognize, there's where I used to work in New Haven a lot, there was Workforce Alliance. And there may be a comparable organization in your town or community, and for state and local, in which they start to identify works individuals from a variety of sources within the community, provide them with some training, and in some cases subsidize their salaries for periods of time being placed in new organizations. So certainly there's a lot of ways to identify the talent. The talent is out there and ways for it to be identified. Within our organization, how we work with clients with our diversity, equity, and inclusion opportunities, we use the model offered by a predictive index. And that is when you start looking at individuals, the resume is a person's briefcase that they're going to bring to you. But keep in mind, if I may, that the briefcase may, in fact, the resume may start to give you that unconscious bias approaches that you want to start to minimize. For example, and I had a friend and his name was Sean O'Grady. If you see Sean O'Grady at the top of the resume, that's going to give you certain inputs and ideas about hiring Sean. So perhaps one of the things you can do is take the name off of the resumes as you're starting to look at that to help you with your unconscious bias approaches. The other point is having a psychological profile to see if it's the type of person who is predisposed to working with that type of environment, whatever the responsibilities or requirements for the job. Just think about the differences between software engineering environment and the sales environment. Two different types of people. That's where the psychological profile can start to fit. And then the cultural fit is what you would then start to address and have an understanding for the individual based upon the interview with a prescribed set of questions. Next chart, please. And so Blake McMorris, our Director of Diversity, his comment is an optimized team really looks the same. And I would submit to you as you start looking about your teams, look about those teams that are successful and those teams that are doing well across all industries, they start to see they're more optimized. And so they're no longer as homogeneous as perhaps they were. Next slide, we start to wrap up. And so I thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to field them. I didn't see any going through, so I'm concerned that perhaps everyone wasn't getting a chance to use the XLEAP, but be happy to take any questions at this point in time, man.
Great. Thanks, Cornell. So I guess are we out of XLEAP now, or? Oh, John, we can't hear you. John, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, let me bring everybody to the questions that we want to bring everybody to. So very similar to our first activity, we were looking for potential places for the next conference. We now have some other questions here, and you can click on any of them on the left. The first one is, what ways is your organization implementing inclusive hiring practices? Click on that, and then the blue circle with white plus for your idea here, and answer that. You can also go right to what ideas or thoughts has this session left you with. If you have other questions for Jose Luis, please click on the orange folder. Any questions for Cornell, or just any other feedback to provide each other.
And I think if you don't want to deal with all the folders, you can just put your questions right in.
Oh, yeah.
And I can get us started. I just want to thank you for both Cornell and Jose Luis for bringing in lots of different ideas from how you write your job descriptions, whether you require a certain level of education or experience, and how you can maybe reduce some of those barriers to where to recruit the best applicants. Where can you go, or can you work with other outside organizations like Cornell talked about the Workforce Alliance. So let's see.
Okay. Giving everybody a moment or two to start thinking and then responding. It gets quiet for a little bit, but we're starting to see things come in. Thank you, folks.
Jose Luis, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more just about that idea of cultural marketing.
Yeah, of course, I can do that. Cultural marketing, intentional. That's the key, I guess. But yes, when you're talking about cultural marketing, is one thing is to use when you're translating your documents, right? You translate your application, your job description. Please do not use Google Translate or any of those tools. Hire a professional translator, and depending on what you're looking for. Okay, so one thing that I in the city that I work for, the city of Longmont today, we have a 32% Latino population. So most of those 32% are from Mexico in our case. Okay, so or there are some words that I cannot use in Spanish if I try to advertise from somebody from a community from Argentina, right? Some words that are bad words for them, and they're regular common words for us. So let's be conscious of what the population you're looking for. Not everybody. We're not Latinos. We're not a monolithic community. We are very rich. Somebody from the Caribbean, from Central America, from South America, we're different, even though we all speak Spanish, except for Brazil, of course. We're different. So that's what I'm talking about, the number one step. Number two is, if you're, as I mentioned before, the different channels that you use, right? So there are nonprofit organizations that work with the Latino community. So if you want to advertise and you want to do it right, go through them. They work, they already know the community. They can help you. Those are some of the channels that you find. And I also mentioned Facebook and WhatsApp. WhatsApp is an incredible tool. Everybody in my community uses WhatsApp because we call our countries, right? It's free for us to call our countries. It doesn't cost us anything. So we all have WhatsApp installed in our cell phones. So if you can use those channels, that's what I'm talking about.
Great, thank you. So let's look at the questions for Cornell. What are some resources for effective hiring practices, like blind auditions, that organizations can use?
Well, the number of resources, certainly, as I mentioned, there are colleges and universities that are looking for pathways, opportunities for their students, as well as establishing connections with those businesses who might have those opportunities. There's a number, most of your cities and towns, at least from my experience, are looking to bring on additional workforces. And so, in fact, I was just at a mayoral debate yesterday in which nearly every one of the mayoral candidates decided that, this is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that they were going to have an office in their administration in order to help businesses connect with the various employment organizations within the city and or with individuals. And so those would be great places to start. Colleges and universities, existing state and local organizations to support bringing on new employees. And I think your larger municipalities are also concerned about that.
Thank you, Cornell. I'm looking in the folder for Jose Luis. Let's see. How does translation software help bridge communications? Because you talked a little bit about the dangers of Google Translate. Are there other resources that folks should use?
Well, there is always one thing that, so here's what happened to me. Okay, when I was, I got hired by the city, and the first thing that I got as I took my job on, I got all these people. There were 2,500 employees at that city, and all a lot of people from there learned that now we have a bilingual person in our staff. So guess what? They started to bombard me with all the translations requests, right? Yeah. And that was not my job. So what I did then is, since I was working with businesses, I helped a couple of people that were starting their own. They were professional translators. I help them establish their own company so that they can be hired by the city and make the connections. A professional translator, somebody that is qualified, that has the certifications and everything to do the translations. That is the best way. Google Translate or Microsoft Office, they do have a translation software too. You can use that, but that's just kind of that gives you probably 70% of the content. 30% will be wrong or will be not correct. So if you want to use the software, use that, but then have somebody that understand the community that you're talking to kind of review that and fix the problems that are there. But do not use the software just to try to translate your content.
Yeah,
please don't do that.
I can give a Vermont specific example. We had someone translate something for us, and transfer station was translated as bus station. And so we needed somebody to kind of who spoke the language to read through it and realize that that really was not at all what we meant, and find the correct word. And I can't remember what language it was, but very important step.
Yeah. So I was just reviewing some of the reports that the city provided 2 years ago, and there was one sentence that was translated literally, So I'm assuming it was software. It didn't mean anything in Spanish. It was only like probably like 12 words. It was a sentence, but it was completely wrong. So it didn't mean anything. So I had to fix that, you know, with to do it, to make it right. So it happens.
And I guess along those lines, and this could be an answer or a question for either of you. So how would you recommend posting job descriptions in multiple languages on social media? Or maybe other platforms?
Yeah, so for me, if you, the answer to that question is the way that we do it is first, we start, as I say before, first of all, connect with the nonprofit organizations, the local nonprofit organizations, because they do have social media that is very active and they have reach to the community. So my recommendation is talk to them, right? And ask them to post the job application. If you're trying to get somebody that speaks Mandarin, then do it in that language, right? Do the translation to that language and provide it to the non-profit organizations that are focusing on that. Another thing is what we did at the city that I work for now. We have a small group of women that live on the different neighborhoods, and they made their own company, and we hired them. We pay them a fee so that they can go around and provide the flyers to people that we want to reach. So there is many different options. Cornell.
Apologies, I was responding to one of the notes. I would say that the consideration is you have to meet people where they are. And where they are, they could be churches and religious organizations. Certainly that might be a place to identify any variety of opportunity for employees. Also social activities. When was the last time you went to a soccer match? Or when's the last time you went to a cricket match in order to identify potential employees? Everything's not always at the Little League, and for the sponsorship of those activities, which gives an organization opportunity to show a broader community reach and deeper engagement. And I think those then give you the opportunity of having, when people start to identify you or your organization as like, hey, that's somewhere that you might want to consider looking for employment and or new business opportunities for working with that organization.
It also, when you come down to when you're doing a Zoom session where you're gonna do some kind of a workshop and you're gonna be talking about the different job openings that are there, that Zoom always has the option to connect to Facebook, so you can live stream on Facebook. And if you invite the right organizations that can promote that event, then you're gonna get more audience, because you'll be amazed. Some of the workshops that we did, there was people standing on this is a hairstylist, right? And she was cutting somebody's hair, and she was watching the workshop. Even the person that was getting their hair cut, she was making comments on that time. So business owners or people that is looking for, they can learn in those places. So.
Great. I think this question also could apply to either of you or both of you. Are there career track maps that exist that show what education requirements there are for different jobs in the industry? So entry level versus advanced or anywhere in between?
Well, if I don't understand what that means. Can you explain that? Maybe Cornell can answer, and then I don't understand the question really. So can you rephrase it for me, please?
I'm guessing, unless Cornell, if you have an idea. Like at the state of Vermont, we have different requirements for different level jobs. So an entry level job might say, just needs 2 years of experience in a related job. As you go up the ladder, it might say you need either a associate's degree or 3 years experience, or 4, and and then it kind of goes up. And one way that the state did attempt to make our hiring more, is attempting to make our hiring more open and diverse and inclusive, is to relax some of the education requirements. It used to say you needed the degree plus the experience, and now it says, you know, it's definitely an or. And if you can show you have all the experience or related skills, then great. So that's what I'm guessing this relates to.
If I may, continue on with your theme there, and the state of Connecticut also went through a recent evaluation in which they were identifying those jobs that didn't actually require a college degree in order to be to apply for. So I would submit that would be one way to start. The other difficulty is, as mentioned in the video presented by Ms. Coleman earlier, the career paths now are so varied in regards to what is going to be the next combination, that to put together a career path now, you probably need a decision tree that continues to grow because, you know, the job that's out there will be different than where you started. And so I got something out of the presentation there that don't ask young people what they want to be anymore, because unless you're going to tell them specifically, I want to do something that's a traditional career path, it's now gotten pretty varied in regards to the approaches. I think the question is, perhaps what type of person do you want to hire? What psychological fit you're looking for? What are the skill sets that they bring to regard to their cognitive thinking and their approach to things? And, you know, because at one point in time, I used to work for IBM, and, you know, there was a focused orientation. In fact, so did John, my colleague. There was a focused orientation, and they decided that, well, we don't necessarily care about having someone with a particular skill set, because we're going to teach you the skill set. Well, we wanted someone with the right attitude. Okay, and so you get the right attitude, we can train you to have the right skill set. So maybe that might be a way to pursue going forward.
And that for me is one of those, that's why I love that description that I show you in one of the slides. It's, you know, it's, it doesn't require a degree. You can fulfill the those requirements with experience. And that, I think that when you put that in the balance, you will be able to reach out to a more broader community. And so I think, you know, I don't think there should be a map really, right? Because it's hard to quantify, you know. It's not about the quantity, it's about quality, the quality. What is it that you're looking for and the skills that you're looking for? Okay, so if you find those in the specific profile, then that's what you're going to be requiring. But yeah, no, I don't think, my perspective is I cannot really tell you what a map is for that.
We only have a few more minutes, but one of the things I wanted to show you or point out is that in XLEAP, some of the folders John's created, it also says, you know, what ideas or thoughts has this session left with you? And so that's a great way to just click on that and learn, you know, what's been interesting for some of the other participants in this session. So, you know, someone said, I love the idea of stating in the job posting that we're encouraging people to think broadly about their background and not to fall for imposter syndrome, you know, that they probably can do most of the things that are in the job description. And then the other folder, what ways is your organization implementing inclusive hiring practices? There are a bunch of great thoughts in there. Hire for character and attitude, then teach and train. I love that one. And there was one more question that I thought might be applicable to both of you. Now, where did it go? Well, now I lost it. I'm still learning this software as well. Oh, maybe I think it was about just evaluating your approach. I guess it's not really a question, but evaluate your approach to hiring and consider the ideas that are providing barriers to the potential employees. So maybe if both of you might want to just end with ideas for how to remove the barriers, but then also how to encourage folks to apply for jobs that might not be, they might not be able to check all the boxes of the experience.
Yeah, one of the things that I was talking about before is that if I'm looking for somebody that I want this person to fulfill this specific task, these things, the way that I will do it is to encourage them to apply. Is first put the caption on the application, promote it, and if I can provide an opportunity for that person to come into the organization and to spend some time there learning more about what the environment looks like. It's not as scary as it is when you're outside and you're thinking about, oh my God, this is a huge organization. Am I going to be able to fulfill my duties here? But if you have a chance to set up a group so they can come and join somebody, invite them to visit, I mean, that will be really, really an eye-opener for a lot of people that do not have a clue of what is going on inside that organization. It's not as bad as we think, really.
And if I may just wrap up, my comments would be that leadership starts from the top. And so you have to have the top of the organization, the management team decide it's something you want to do. And once you have that opportunity, then you can start looking, what does it take? Because you don't know who your next great person or employee is going to be, or what package they're going to be delivered to you in. So my recommendation is get the best combinations of people, make sure all the packages work together, and you have to maybe make some modifications, but it'll be well worthwhile.
And also representation. As you go in, you see people that are, if I see management up at the top that looks like me, I'm gonna feel more confident. So you just have to see that, and you start one step at a time. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all three presenters, Cornell, Jose Luis, and John, for joining us and sharing all your thoughts and experience and ideas. And I'm gonna pass us back on to Mary Ann, who will tell us what's next.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks again.
Thank you all, and thank you for introducing us to XLEAP and how we were able to use that so that everyone could share their ideas anonymously. That was really interesting to me. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we are now going to start a break for 15 minutes, and we'll be back here at 3:15. And I want to encourage all of you to visit our virtual exhibit hall, the link to which you should see in the chat. And we'll see you back here at 3:15. Thank you.
Mary Ann, you're muted.
I sounded so good too. Let me start over. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to start our next session, and we have Jessica Levine, Diversity and Inclusion Manager with the Recycling Partnership, who will moderate the session and introduce our speakers and get us going. Jessica?
Thank you so much, Mary Ann, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are enjoying this year's spring conference so far, focused on building a diverse workforce and sustainable materials management. I'm very excited to moderate our final session today on clearing career pathways for underrepresented individuals. And I'm joined by experts, Michelle Wiseman, who's the Director of Waste Diversion and Outreach for the City of Atlanta's Mayor's Office of Resilience, and Fields Jackson, who's the CEO and Chief Cheerleader of Racing Toward Diversity magazine and the President of College Diversity Network. Today, Michelle and Fields are going to share their insights on this session's topic and discuss examples of programs that support diversity and inclusion of underrepresented individuals in the materials management industry. So as our speakers share, please include any questions that you have in the chat section. We will have dedicated time toward the end of this session to answer those questions. Now to kick us off, I'd like to invite Michelle to introduce yourself and also share more about your work related to this focus area. And feel free to share your screen as needed. Michelle?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having me, Jessica and Mary Ann. You all are talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. Again, my name is Michelle Wiseman. I am the Director of Waste Diversion and Outreach for the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Resilience. And I'm gonna really try to share with you all some of the things that we're doing in the City of Atlanta. I want to make sure, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great, excellent. So first of all, I am in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and Stone Mountain, Georgia is the home. I want to recognize that this is the home of the Creek, the Muskogee, and the Cherokee Native tribes. These tribes were here approximately 8,000 years. The indigenous tribes were here approximately 8,000 years before it was colonized in the 17th and 18th century. And it's interesting because as we talk about this subject, I think that some of the indigenous, the indigenous background is going to be critical to reducing waste for the future.
Michelle, really quickly, as you
Yes.
begin, are you open to sharing in the presentation mode for your slides?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is that better?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so let's get to it. I am an expert on materials, and I've really become an expert on building materials, and I'm going to share with you all why. I am not necessarily from Atlanta. I become very knowledgeable about Atlanta's history, and especially about history in the South. And I'm really intrigued about the history of materials in the South, especially in Atlanta, and how that is related to our current situation with what we're dealing with. And I'm going to tell you why. The history of materials is very important. When you look at a big city like Atlanta, if you look at that skyline, all I see are materials. I see bricks, I see cement, concrete, glass. I see all of the materials that it took to actually build this city. And one of the things that I have learned about the history of these materials is that there are places that have been extracted from to create these beautiful buildings. And I'm going to give you an example. This material here is granite that was mined out of our quarry called the Bellwood Quarry. And these items of this granite was mined out of the Bellwood Quarry. You all are very familiar. This is the Georgia pine. They don't make them like this anymore. These beautiful woods that were cut down to build the cities. And the final thing that I want to share with you are the bricks. This brick here was actually minted in Savannah, Georgia. And if you all know Savannah, Georgia was one of the ports where the enslaved people came into. And this brick was actually minted by one of the enslaved people, and there are still fingerprints in this brick. So this is history when we're talking about really making sure that we're preserving history by making sure that we're reusing as many of these materials as possible. The other thing I really would like to share is that the indigenous perspective is definitely more regenerative than extractive. So when we're looking at how we can reuse materials, that is part of the regenerative mindset that we're really trying to incorporate into the reuse, recycling, and into potential job opportunities. The other thing I really am excited about is the opportunity to solve problems through using these materials. And we're going to show you how we can develop new businesses and impart new skills to some of our citizens. So we're going to be talking about what we call the asset-based community development model. Asset-based community development means that we're looking at the skills of the individual to help solve problems in the community. So what that means is in the past, we've looked at what they call the social service model, which is what America, a good part of America thinks about when they're talking about helping people that may be underrepresented. And that focuses on the needs as opposed to assets. It focuses on problems. It's seen as like charity or donations. It's more of a system approach. But the asset-based community development approach is really looking at individuals as relationships. It's looking at the community, and it's also looking at what are the current issues that are within the community that we can help solve with our people. And I think that that's why part of the reason I think that the history is so important, because knowing our history helps empower our citizens. If our citizens know what the history of the previous generation, that so many of the African Americans were the original builders, they were the original people that were creating the buildings. And honestly, in Georgia, they say that there's not a road or bridge that has been built without what they call convict labor. And what I actually found in the city of Atlanta is that it was very systematically created, because there is a place called the Chattahoochee Brick Company that produced 200,000 bricks a day. And it is directly on the rail line from the jail. So this was created very specifically to take the jail population directly to the brick company. And also the granite company is also on that same train spur. So there's no accident that these people that were incarcerated. And the other thing that I have learned about Georgia is that many of the young African-American men were arrested for anything from walking on grass to not having a job to not having someone vouch for them. So they were using them as another work source without paying them. And that is part of the reason why mass incarceration still exists today, because that is part of the weaving of the history that I'm not sure that it's many of us really understand the depth of how intentional those things were. So what we need to do is help understand what is the asset community-based development approach, so we can focus on empowering individuals to make sure that they're involved and engaged to becoming assets for the community. And now they can lift up their communities and have really great careers because there's a lot of wealth in these buildings. So when we look at community assets, we're looking at what are people's gifts. Everybody is not college bound, but everyone does have a gift. The other thing I have found about Indigenous people is they're more artistic, they're more hands-on, as opposed to, and I'll give you a perfect example. I have children and my daughters are in their 20s and they have no desire to go to college and to do the kind of work that I do. They're more of the creative type. And it's funny because my 25-year-old, when she realized that she didn't have to go to college, it's like she came home one day, it's like, I don't have to go to college? Well, technically, no. Oh, good, I'm done. I don't want to go to college. She's a creative. And now she's made her own way by being a life coach, and she does weddings, and she's this creative spirit that really wants to do other things. So we just have to look at what are our gifts, what are the things that we need to create a path for our future, and looking at what are the youth organizations, what are, food is also a big issue, and looking at people's talents and skills to grow that local food and become sources for their own community. The other thing that I love about this, looking at the asset community level, is the opportunity for businesses. Now you can really see how to grow businesses and grow the community as opposed from the top down, from the bottom up. So we're better together. And I think that once we invite other people, The other thing is that everybody has their gifts and talents. So we need to encourage folks to come in at all levels. I've learned some of my greatest and best lessons from people that you didn't think were going to give you this amazing light of information. But I think we need to open our mind, because as cities become more diverse, we need to make sure that we're including everyone in the conversation, and that way that we're building better cities for our whole community. And I'm going to give you a few examples. One is America, and it's not just Atlanta, but this is Atlanta's Beltline, is there's an affordable housing dilemma. So how can we take these skills and these materials to help solve for America's affordable housing dilemma? And I'm going to give you a couple examples. One example, and we're blessed to have what we call a life cycle building center here. And the life cycle building center actually takes material. So instead of doing the demolition that is the traditional make, take, waste system for buildings, we are doing intentional deconstruction. And when you do intentional deconstruction, you can actually see what is usable. Atlanta has one of the highest energy burdens in the United States. So because we have a high energy burden, we have an opportunity to do weatherization for families. So if we can help them reduce their energy burden by giving them new windows, maybe we can take the windows and doors off of a house that is getting ready to be, has reached its end of life. So we can help with either efficiency, we can help make the house more livable, more functional. And that's something that we've been working with our communities to do. Deconstruction training. They estimate that for every one house that's being demolished, we can have 7 homes that are going to be deconstructed. So you're pulling all those beautiful materials out. You're pulling out doors, windows, fixtures, clawfoot tubs, all of those things that are in pretty high demand. When we start pulling those materials out, then we're reusing and putting them back into circulation. We're also giving our community these valuable skills. And we have several people that have started. Matter of fact, we are in the midst of doing a training at the Life Cycle Building Center right now, that we take all of these materials, and then you can be creative and make yourself, a bar, bookshelf, bookcase, tables, and all. And we're giving the people these life skills, because the best way to learn how to build something is by tearing it down. So as they tear it down, they learn a little bit about electrical, they learn a little bit about plumbing, they learn maybe how to do floors, and all of that material now becomes a source for a thriving business. And I know across the United States, because I'm on the board for the National Build Reuse Board, and there are businesses that have sprung up all across the US, and it could be simple as a door company. There's one called Unhinged, or you can just do floors or windows, or all of these things that can potentially be businesses for our community. And as you all may know, that the median age right now is in the lower to middle 40s. So we definitely need more of these skilled workers in our workforce. So my idea is for us to take all of these materials and figure out how we can recirculate them. And you all, I'm not sure if you realize that textiles, along with electronics, are some of the fastest growing waste streams going to the landfill. So they're mining out the materials out of the electronics. And now we have a company that we're working for. We have a large Indian population in Metro Atlanta, and they're taking the saris and making really beautiful, because those saris are so colorful, they're amazing. They're taking the saris and repurposing them for household goods, remaking them, putting them as patches or as other garments. So there's a lot of creativity that can go through with reimagining materials. I can't get into food waste right now, because that would take me down a whole nother rabbit hole. But you all know that Americans, just worldwide, actually, 40% of the food that is produced in the world is actually not consumed. So that's a huge opportunity to feed hungry, to feed animals and develop compost. And compost is incredibly important because compost helps sequester the moisture. It helps regenerate the air. It has so many magical qualities that's a whole nother conversation, but I say compost is magical. So I definitely want us to think about like putting, if you're in a position where you can hire, make sure that you keep your mind open for, not only minorities, but women, for younger people, for all of us to be intergenerationally connected. And that is what really is going to make us a stronger, more resilient nation, is by making sure that we're inviting everyone to the table. And I just feel like that's going to improve on every level if we have more engagement on every level from the top to the bottom. But this particular program starts from the bottom up. Bring them to the table and they will definitely tell you what the issues are in the community, and then we can help solve them from there. I just am, in closing, want to share a photo of the Candida building. It's a living building that is in Atlanta on Georgia Tech's campus. A lot of this building was created by using repurposed materials. I could really talk to you all about this. They have water retention, the solar, you see how well lit it is. So it's very insulated. So if we're more creative, we can create more of these living buildings. So it uses less resources. It actually gives more energy than it takes. So this is the design of the future, the Candida building on Georgia Tech's campus. Finally, I want to give a shout out. One of the things that we do in Atlanta is we have a sustainability ambassador course. It's a 6-week session that talks about the different pillars of sustainability, and it's a grassroots effort to help people understand how they can make a difference. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate your insights on this focus area. Now, before we get into questions, I'd love for us to welcome Fields Jackson to share his screen and provide some information to us as well. Fields.
Thanks, Jessica. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Michelle, I think you may have to unshare your screen first.
Okay.
Are we sure that he's the real
there it
Fields
is.
Jackson?
Okay, yeah.
I can attest he is the
sharing.
real Fields Jackson.
There we go. There you go, Fields. It's all yours.
Okay, let me try sharing it now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, let me, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jessica. Let me see if I can. Well, thank you for having me join your conference. I'm going to talk a little about creating pathways. I'm on the road, so forgive me the backdrop. But a little bit about me. I'm Fields Jackson, CEO of Racing Toward Diversity magazine, president of College Diversity Network. I'm an adjunct professor at about 15 schools. I'm trying to get up to about 25, mostly HBCUs. We'll be physically visiting about 50 schools this year with job boards, et cetera. I'm on LinkedIn is primary, but I'm on almost every social media platform except TikTok. My children told me if they caught me dancing on TikTok, there was an intervention. So I'm probably going to get on TikTok, but the dancing I'm going to leave to somebody else. But every other social media platform. So connect with me on LinkedIn primarily. Our magazine, we are strictly digital now, but we started the platform about 15 years ago to promote diversity, the best practices for diversity. A little bit about our demographics. We do a lot with C-suite organizations around women. Our biggest audience is students, early career. We work with Hispanic and Asian organizations, and we've got a tremendous relationship with HBCUs, which are historically Black colleges. This is where the HBCUs are. There's over 100 historical Black, there used to be about 300, but now currently there's over 100 historically Black colleges and universities in America. As you can see, most of them are east of the Mississippi. However, there are students all over the country. We do a lot of reverse engineering because if you can imagine, there's students in California and there are no, well, there's a medical school there, but there are no HBCUs. But the students from California, they attend schools in Daytona Beach, et cetera. So if you've got companies outside of this region, there are students that have attended HBCUs that basically, if they knew there were opportunities back in their hometown, they would get very excited. So just imagine a kid from California that went to Daytona Beach because that's where he wanted to go to school. And usually he's recruited or she is recruited around the local talent, around Florida. But again, opportunities with deans, professors, and through our network, if that student knew, hey, there's a great job back for you in your hometown, you would get, again, the quantity is not going to be high, but the quality of students is going to be pretty powerful. We've done some stuff with this was Facebook campaign that sort of kicked off our social media a while back. LinkedIn recognized me as one of the top diversity folks a while back. And again, recently, diversity in my world sort of changed after George Floyd. We've been talking about diversity for quite some time, but I think the world got to see through George Floyd and the subsequent things that happened after that, a lot of conversation around this. There's a company called Analytica out of London, England. They do social media and measurement campaigns for some of the top people on the planet, the Super Bowl, et cetera. They measure discussions around the world. After George Floyd, they started to track the diversity hashtag. And as you guys know, the Kardashians are thought leaders. So everybody pops up, there's a thought leader, but just because you're a thought leader doesn't mean I'm going to follow you or I'm going to take your advice. So they actually wanted to track to say who was tracking on this conversation. And I had no idea who these folks were, but they identified, they called me about 2 years ago and said, based on that conversation after George Floyd, I was recognized as one of the top 14 people in the world. It impressed my kids, I'll tell you that. But also I was number 5 in the USA. But again, I did not know, folks, I had that voice. I'm talking to my audience. I didn't know I had that kind of voice. But as Jessica and the folks here know, I decided to use that voice for good. And for the good is, okay, if we want to talk about diversity, I'm not going to talk about what's wrong. How do we fix it? How do we get you around the best thought leaders? How do we get about best practices? Because as you guys know, there's always somebody in the meeting that can point out what's wrong. That's great. How do you fix it? That's where we go. How do you fix it? Let's get the people that have done it around you and the best practices and move that thing forward. Some of the companies we work with, we work with a lot of big brands around this whole subject. And again, best practices. Some of the government agencies we work with, just a quick snapshot, some of the nonprofits we work with. But about 8 years ago, we started to build customized job boards for HBCUs. So, and particularly not the big HBCUs, because again, I didn't go to an HBCU, but again, I become really immersed in HBCUs. I only thought there was about 40 HBCUs. And I had friends that had gone to HBCUs because, you probably hear the same ones over and over. Howard, you would hear the same ones. When I became involved, I found that there's over 100. So there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of talent in some of the HBCUs that just don't happen to get a lot of opportunities. So we started to build custom job boards. And the job board was, the power behind the job board was that we built a job board that was free to the school, free to the student, with the goal that if you put a job on South Carolina State's job board, the students there would see it, but it would network on all these other boards. So it would sort of go viral on all these other boards. That's where our social media numbers took off. So if it makes sense, that's how Analytica found me. Because again, they were like, well, who's where's this conversation coming from? So you can see based on this job boards, we were able to take great jobs. So if you got a great job, we would put it on a board and it tended to go viral. So that's where this whole thing started. I think there's slip. Okay. The power of our network, we also do virtual career fairs. We just had one in February. We have one twice a year, and they're based on semester. So we're going to have another one in September. We are on our 8th virtual career fair. The career fairs took off during the pandemic. So if you can imagine, during the pandemic, companies wanted to hire, but nobody could go anywhere. So with our job boards, we were on these campuses. So again, we were able to get opportunities, even though, you know, the pandemic was happening. This really took off for us. So one of the things you see is that we're in over 100 HBCUs. We're also in about 250 other schools around the country. And as you know, there's diverse students walking around UNC Chapel Hill. There's diverse students walking around Rutgers. So what happened was, even though we were concentrating on HBCUs, word spread. And one of the examples I'll give, one of the first career fairs we had, and we had about 50 companies. And again, from Federal Reserve banks to HP, Dell, we had some great companies there. But one of our first career fairs, there was a young man from Eastern Oregon, and he signed up. And you probably see my personality. I had to call him. I said, son, you're from Eastern Oregon. There isn't an HBCU within 8 states of you. How did you find out? He said, well, yeah, Mr. Jackson, I go to Eastern Oregon, but my brother goes to Morgan. And I'm like, duh. So what happens, bad news travels, so does good news. So these great jobs were popping up and people were saying, hey, you know what? They were passing it on to their network and saying, hey, you know what? These are credible jobs from great companies. So that's where our network really took off. So we're in quite a few colleges and universities across the country, not just HBCUs, right? And we consider diversity to be everybody. And I say that. You know, if I'm running a Black company, a white person's diverse. If everybody in my company is old, young people. So again, based on what you're looking for, diversity is everybody. Now, getting them to not only come to your company but stay, that becomes the inclusion, et cetera. We just started a new. What we also found out, even though we were going at early career and internship. During we did a demographic survey. About 48% of the folks that signed up were alumni. Now we weren't talking to them. However, what we found out was that these great jobs were hitting campuses that, especially some of the smaller campuses, that they just weren't getting these great job opportunities. So the jobs would actually elevate to the president, to the dean, where now you've got these great opportunities, and they were passing on our jobs to folks that wasn't in our target market, because we were looking at early career and internship. But somebody would come back for homecoming and say, hey, you know, I'm relocating, whatever. And then they would say, hey, you know, this College Diversity Network or this Fields Jackson, take a look at these jobs. So when we took a look at who was actually applying, about 48% were alumni or more seasoned professionals. So we created another job board called the College Alumni Network, where we can do early career and internship. But if you've got a great job, you know, we can get that great job in front of 100 deans or 100 presidents that now, you know, they know their valedictorians. They've been there 20, 30 years. They know who their great students are. They know who they are. And typically we don't get all 100 to apply or respond. But what happens, if 25 presidents pass a great job on, typically, you know, that's a real good screening process. The folks that show up are pretty solid citizens, you know, and we also found that sometimes, you know, the president says, hey, that's a great job for my wife, or I got a brother. So the network that that fishing pool we sort of get into is not somebody that's out on LinkedIn, not somebody that's looking, but now these great opportunities start to resonate in our network. and I'm going to wrap up here. We just started working with Keep America Beautiful. They've got some unbelievable campaigns to do things around, I guess, Martin Luther King drives around America. A lot of the Martin Luther King, beautify Martin Luther King Drive. A lot of those happen to run through HBCU campuses. So here's some great jobs that I've been able to circulate to the presidents of the schools, et cetera. And I think the response has just been incredible. So we believe, and I think this is my last slide. Yeah, we believe that, our touch point starts with a job. If you got a job, and again, based on the geography or what you're looking for, we can actually, we believe we can get those in front of networks that can get you diverse talent. Doesn't mean you're going to hire them, but we can really diversify your talent pool. We also believe by diversifying your talent pool, you're going to find some diamonds out there. You're going to find some great talent that just was not aware of your opportunity. That's where we believe we can help. We're excited about working with the folks at Keep America Beautiful. We're excited about working with your organization about, finding talent in maybe some different locations, but actually letting them know what these opportunities exist. And a lot of that is just some of the students just are not aware of the opportunity. It's not that they don't want to do it, but they just are not aware of the opportunity. And once they're made aware, okay, this is a great job. This is in your hometown. This is what the network is. We believe we can find some talent and some opportunities for some folks that actually now may change the way you recruit. So Jessica, that's what I got.
Thank you so much, Fields. I'd say that between you, Fields, and Michelle, you all have provided so much insightful information, great examples, and also resources. So we appreciate you so much for your time. Now I'd love for us to lean into some of the questions that came up in the chat. The first one is to you, Michelle, on where did the funds come from for the Sustainability Ambassador Program?
So we developed the Sustainability Ambassador Program, as Field said, to exposure to some of these sustainability opportunities. And it actually is something that we just created within our office. It's totally free. It's totally voluntary, except that there are 7 courses, and the participants sign up. We have the session twice a year in the spring and the fall. And once they sign up, anyone that signs up and can make the classes are welcome to attend. And if they attend at least 6 of the 7, then they receive a certificate. So far, we've graduated over 400 ambassadors since 2017.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. Fields, can you talk about how you reach out to your students? You may have spoken to that a little bit already in regards to the alumni platform, but we'd love for you to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, through social media, but I'm a guest lecturer on. As a matter of fact, I'm heading to North Carolina A&T right after I get off this call, and then I'll be heading to Winston-Salem. So I go in and I'm a guest lecturer. And again, just so you know, most of the colleges, and again, if you've got local people, they love to have career days. They love to bring in lecturers to talk about, and Michelle, I talked to Michelle, I'd love to get her in front of some students that just, make you aware of the industry. Now, the thing is, the bonus is if you not only make you aware of the industry, but you got a job, right? Ooh, I mean, it gets special. So I go in and I talk about entrepreneurship, diversity, et cetera. And I may be in a classroom of about maybe 300, 400, big auditorium. And I say, who needs a job? Whoa. And they'll lean over. Did he say job? The hands go up. So if you've got jobs, and again, I'll say, well, here's the company. Here's the link. These folks are looking to hire you, right? And so when you call, and part of this with students, getting a live person is so a lot of times, you send your resume into a PO box. I don't even know if you got it. So now, guess what? I've got a live connection. Can I connect with your LinkedIn? So I will say, who needs a job? And again, with the dean there, with the professors, they're usually funneling their best students over to me, because they're students that are ready to graduate. They don't have a job. The kids are valedictorians, the head of the track, don't have a job. So they're looking for opportunities. And when opportunities from great companies come up, you're going to get a focused person. You really are. So now that you get the application, so I take that and also put it on my Jessica, to answer your question, I put it on my social media. You saw, I didn't know I had that kind of voice, but I know now when I put a great job up there are people that are looking at that job. And part of what we've built our reputation is that we're a credible source for jobs, if that makes sense. There's folks that put jobs up, and I saw this thing in the Wall Street Journal that they're putting up ghost jobs. There's no intention to hire them. I'm putting up a job, and it's really frustrating. But again, part of what, like the Keep America Beautiful, those are unbelievable jobs that I sent out to administration, and I'm getting, professors that are saying, hey, you know what, I'm tired of being a professor. I mean, so we're getting a real high quality of folks that are saying, hey, you know what, why don't I take a look at that opportunity? So we use our social media, and then in person, it really takes off, Jessica. I've been on campus a couple of times where I actually got a job before I got off campus. Wow. And if you can imagine, I'm sitting in the cafeteria and the kids running across, Mr. Jackson, I got a job. The whole cafeteria stops. Like, what was that? You mean that lecture he gave, that was for real? Yeah, that was for real. So that tends to go viral. Mm-hmm. And now it's sort of like, okay, where's that next opportunity?
That's great. And also, Fields, you've mentioned a few times finding your voice, right? And not knowing you had one, finding it and the value of that, right? To then amplify it. So for individuals on this call, especially individuals who may not know really where to start on the DE&I side, do you have any recommendations or, encouragement points for finding their voice in this area of intersecting DE&I in our sustainable materials management world that we're in?
Oh yeah, the first place is you got to start. I think, again, I don't want to do a commercial for Keep America Beautiful, but they're going to have a recycling campaign and almost all the HBCUs. So again, now when you get these things, what are you going to do? How are you going to recycle? So I don't think people realize the recycling loop that's in their very backyard. Mm-hmm. Somebody's picking up, somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that. So things are going on their campus that I think a lot of these companies you're dealing with, I just don't know there's an opportunity. So I see somebody picking up, I see somebody doing something. I just don't know how that relates to me, right? Mm-hmm. So if beautifying my neighborhood becomes a recycling thing for Michelle, you see yourself, if doing this, right, instead of me throwing this away, this is going to help a family, I may change my behavior a little bit, right? So it's actually knowing, it's more information. But to answer your question, you got to start someplace. So part of that's the realization, okay, do you or do you not, if you're great with diversity, then hey, no worries, go to sleep at night. But if you're not, okay, there may be some areas where you're doing real well. We may be doing great with women. We may be doing great with Hispanic. So there may be, and that's great. That doesn't mean stop. But are there areas where, you could do better? I won't say you're failing. You could do better, mm-hmm. Right? So how do you do better? Okay, and so if I ask you, well, how many Black people in your company? 2. Okay, you good with that? Yeah, I'm good. Well, then, hey, no worries. But if you say, hey, you know what, we could do better. How do you do better? And then what our thing is, based on what we find out where you need to get better, let me put you with thought leaders that have done it really well. I'm not going to put you with the people losing. It's like, if I want to learn how to play football, I'm sending you to Dabo Sweeney. I'm sending you to Nick Saban. I'm not going to send you to the guys that's losing all the time. I'm going to send you to the people who's winning, right? Who's setting the standard. Doesn't mean you're going to do it, but you can see, okay, best practices. How did they figure that out? What kind of things did they navigate? And that's how you sort of get better, and you get better by actually doing it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Fields. I'd like to pass the question on to Michelle. When it comes to finding our voices in this space, do you have any thoughts or insights related to that?
Well, I want to piggyback off of what Phil says, and I love that you have the college perspective and then the community perspective, because these types of career paths, because everyone may not be on the college path, but everyone has some type of skill. I always say you don't have to have a education, but you do have to have a skill. So these career paths, as circularity is developing more and more, and there's a lot of terminology now around the whole concept of circularity. So we can have these people learn some basic skills, say if they're doing deconstruction and they're now learning a little bit about electrical or doing floors, now they can maybe get the skill of installing electric vehicle chargers or solar panels or some of the other things that are going to be coming in, doing the building efficiency. These are all areas with the EPA's greenhouse reduction funding that's coming up that are available to community level people, even without a degree. So these are some of the creative things that we really want to encourage our community to get involved in. Maybe how can you make a bookcase out of that discarded material, or do reupholstery or something like that. So I think that in addition to the the focus on education, we can also focus on developing skills in people's creative sides with this type of industry.
That's great. Thank you, Michelle. And Michelle, can you talk a little bit about how your programs taps into the creative talent of people in the community? So I know that you mentioned identifying that skill, and then also I think identifying interest areas or passion areas for of individuals as well, and kind of merging that with opportunities for them when it comes to the workforce space. But what does that really look like? Can you lean into that a little bit more?
And that's why I love the sustainability ambassador, because a lot of times people don't know what they love to do, been exposed to it. So through these series of field trips that we take, we let people see what's going on behind the scenes of a facilities manager, or on what is high efficiency buildings, or how do you do weatherization. And once they see that it's not that complicated, that these are things that they can do, I think a lot of it is about the exposure and allowing people just to lean in and learn through hands-on experiences.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. One question in the chat for Fields is, during recruitment, what are some good ways to share, again, open positions or opportunities with professionals, not necessarily students, at HBCUs?
It's a network. Just a network, and the HBCUs represents a network. I'll just give one example. We were working with NERC, as a pharmaceutical company, and during the pandemic, they needed some senior scientists. They were having a tough time not finding scientists, but diverse scientists. So once again, we were in the early career, and they called, and they said, "Well, Fields, this is what we're looking to do," and they had 10 positions open. So I picked up the phone and called one of the chancellors, and it was fortunate that I got a reputation that people pick up the phone. So I was on the phone with Merck, and I picked up the phone, and it was Chancellor, and he said, "Hey, Fields." I said, "Hey, Chancellor." I said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm teaching class." I said, "Well, why did you pick up the phone?" He said, "Because it's you." So he said hi to the class, say, "Hey." So I said, well, describe what you need to the folks on Merck. So he was on the phone. It was a 3-way call. So they described what they were looking for. The chancellor found 10 people while we were on the phone. 10 people from alumni. This guy was just in my office. The thing is, a lot of the schools have never been asked that before. So it wasn't that they didn't know, but nobody had come back to them to say, hey, we're looking for this. I've had deans and provosts say, hey, Fields, just send me great jobs. And I said, well, why? He said, because I might want it. And I dropped the mic. I said, I might want the job. So again, you start to, I tell people, if you're talking to the same people, you're going to get the same answer. It doesn't mean they're right or wrong, but you're going to get the same answer. If you bring somebody else in the room, even if you don't like that person, they're going to say something that may upset you. It's like, oh my God, but when you go home, you go, why did Fields even say that? You know what I'm saying? So it just opens up another way of looking at things. So, get your opportunities in front of different networks.
Yeah.
You may have to explain the opportunity because people just don't know it's an opportunity. And just you putting it on a board, that just means nothing to me. You see what I'm saying? So now, what's the opportunity? This is what it is. And if you're open to it, I know a number of schools that would love to have one of your executives or somebody come in and say, hey, we got somebody coming in from, American, recycling, and they want to talk about the recycling industry. Trust me, what's going to happen now as an assignment, the students are going to Google it. So I'm not going to go into the class unprepared. So I'm going to Google it. So I'm going to find out. So now I'm going to open up a whole window. And now, hey, I had no idea, like Michelle, this even existed. Wow. You mean somebody actually, and it's funny, some of the kids go, you mean somebody actually gets paid for that? I go, yeah, somebody just actually gets paid for that, to do that, right? So now when you're there, hey, can I connect with you on LinkedIn? Hey, I'd never heard of this. Or, hey, that's what my uncle did. And I never knew what my uncle really did, but now I see that's what he does.
Yeah.
And what happens, you just open up a whole different place to recruit. And again, will every HBCU, land go? But no, you may find 5 or 10 where it's a sweet spot. They're teaching this. There's some connectivity there that they go, you know what? We're teaching a course. We're doing this. Do you have materials from your company that can help me teach this course? You see what I'm saying? Help me teach this course.
Yeah.
And now you start to open up this whole thing where I believe you start to develop a pipeline where once I know what your requirements are, I'm recruiting for you. If I know I can get 10 of my students a job in your industry, that's 10 kids that when they're going across the school, across the stage for graduation, I'm looking them in the eye because you know what? Hey, thank you, Professor. You got me a job. Grandma, everybody in the family is hugging you because guess what? We got this opportunity. And that's where I think things start to take off and start to spread into communities that just aren't aware of it. That's just flat out just not aware of this opportunity. But once they understand and this is what it takes to succeed here, you'll find the talent. You will.
And Fields, has been proven that you get better employee engagement, you get longer retention, you get all of these other benefits when you have more of an inclusive workforce.
Exactly. And Michelle, you know this. You find a great candidate, right? And it's like, again, I'm going to date myself. When I was, as a young man, I was dating, I'm going to bring a girl around. And so all my buddies are laughing until they see her. Oh, wow. Does she have friends? So all of a sudden, does she have friends? Are there more like her? So once you find that great candidate, usually birds of a feather, Michelle, usually they're in a group of folks that you ask them, hey, you got anybody else that needs a job? Guess what? If it's a great place to work, I'm bringing the folks, right?
Yeah.
Now, if the place stinks and you treat me bad, I'm not passing that on. But if you've got that kind of environment where, hey, you know what? They're looking to grow. There's a great job. I just started there. You start to find those pools of talent where it's a fishing hole, and the fish are big because nobody fished in the hole. It doesn't mean nobody fished there before. And if you can start to provide those opportunities, you can find those pipelines of talent. Now, if you don't want to do it, then say it. Yeah, we're not feeling diversity. We don't want to do that. Then great. That way you won't waste your time. You won't waste their time. But if you do, there's folks that we can sort of tie you into around those communities. And to Michelle's point, those communities are the church. So it's not just one place. There's communities where, okay, based on what you're looking for, is that the hairdresser? Is that the church? Is that the firehouse? Wherever that is, that now all of a sudden we get you where people are now looking out for your best interest because they believe your best interest is going to help their community.
Yeah, a lot of women in this industry too.
Really?
Yeah.
How about single moms, Michelle?
A lot.
Oh, so that's
And these are potentially high-paying jobs. These are careers. These aren't just jobs. These are careers that can lead to other, long-term, even entrepreneurial jobs, careers and entrepreneurship.
Well, I'm heading down your way, Michelle. I didn't mean to get on sidebar. I'm heading down your way to Morehouse and Clark. So again, that Atlanta, I'll be in contact with you soon.
Please.
Perfect. And really quickly, I mean, as we're talking about networks, growing our network between Fields and Michelle, but also even, tapping into our own personal networks of, communities that we're a part of, amplifying messages about, specific workforce development opportunities, career opportunities in this industry as well. Sharing or spreading the word in those spheres is really important. But also, we have a question in the chat around, for people who work in local government, especially for individuals on this call who do, who don't necessarily have a budget to promote through a paid service, similar to some that you all mentioned on this call. What are alternative options where we can make sure we're getting this information in the right place specifically?
Now there are also national, I think that as many of us have gone virtual, you could probably find a lot of resources online, and it depends specifically what you're looking for. But I would think that, if you're looking either for, a diverse workforce, or if you're looking for something specific, someone was asking about the sustainability and that, just reach out to someone that that has started that conversation and see how we can advance the conversation. The other thing that I keep saying about sustainability is a lot of this is still relatively new. We're the ones that are blazing the path and trying to figure it out as we go down this.
What I would say is, if you got a great job, I mean, to me, it starts with a job. If you got a great job, there's people that they're frustrated. If you've got a great job, there's folks to sort of get that opportunity in front of. My commitment to your industry is that, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you got a great job, and we get you some great candidates, we'll find some money. If I'm sending you over LeBron James's, if we're solving some issues for you, there's ways to sort of either in kind do some things, and again, not free, but again, there's some ways that if I know there's great jobs, and again, I'm running into folks, and all of a sudden it says, hey, I got a kid that's from Vermont and he's struggling, and it'll pop in the brain. And I go, hey, you know what? I just got off a Zoom call, and it's fate would have it. So, if you got great jobs, we've got channels to get things into. And if we can't find the talent, we'll tell you, we won't spin a lot of wheels, but if we can, then let's see if there's other things that we can do to sort of, get that to happen. Because again, at the end of the day, and this is just me, there's got to be money someplace. Because again, you can't say I don't have any money because you got to pay this person. You know what I'm saying? So there's got to be a budget. So if you've got no budget and all that stuff like that, and it's just an exercise, then I'm not the one. We just check the box. You gave it to Mr. Jack. No, but if you're serious, we'll get you over the candidates. And now if it's, hey, you know what, we were just checking boxes, Mr. Jackson, we just wanted the photo op. Okay, But if now let's take a look at this. Let's see if we can get a school. Let's see if we can do if there's a community college. There's to me there's somebody around that we could pull in our network to say, hey, you know what, let's see if there's a place that needs help. They're looking for 10 people, and in my network, we'll get it to somebody that we believe can help. If they can help, great. If they can't, then hey, it was a great shot.
Thank you so much for that, Fields. And one of the, big things that I'm hearing outside of making sure that, this is an opportunity for us to expand our network between, you, Fields, and Michelle, following you all on LinkedIn and making sure that we stay connected, but also making sure that, prioritizing, diversifying our workforce, that must be something that's an intentional commitment and one that we're willing to put our resources in some way, shape, or form to supporting, and being able to ideate around that of how we're going to approach that is necessary, knowing that, one model or one way is not necessarily collectively going to be the same way that we all approach it. But, with that being said, we'd love to know, are there any ideas that either of you have on ways to encourage more diverse candidates to come to the Northeast as it relates to underrepresented individuals leaning into our workforce within the Northeast? Any insights or suggestions that you all have there?
Connect with Fields. And I must say that 2020 was a time of enlightening. As Fields says, that after George Floyd, I think people did not even realize maybe that they didn't have a diverse workforce, or that, what the struggles have been historically for females, indigenous people, and minorities for a couple of 100 years, that, we've always had this kind of top-down approach. But I think that if we look from the bottom up and start recruiting within our communities, the other thing that I always say is volunteers. Look at volunteers, people that are already maybe at the Keep Atlanta Beautiful. It's funny that Fields is talking about Keep America Beautiful, because that's how I got into this industry. I was a volunteer for Keep DeKalb Beautiful. And after volunteering, I became the board chair. And then I started working for a recycling company. And next thing you knew, I get a phone call from the chief sustainability officer at the city of Atlanta that just knew me from the volunteer work that I did. And that's how I was recruited. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be, a specific job path that gets you there. Sometimes you can go around the bend or, slide in under the door.
That's great.
What I would say, there's diverse kids there's diverse kids in Vermont. So again, the only thing is they may not know of your opportunity.
Right.
A lot of schools, the career services is behind. They're behind. They're behind. They wear multiple hats, et cetera. So they may take a job. And again, think about it. There's 1,000 jobs. You get sent a job, and they take the job and they stick it on a board outside of a classroom. And unless it's, I have no idea, and I'm not going to scan it. So part of that is making that job real. This is the opportunity. This is what we're doing. Like to Keep America Beautiful, and that you're tied to something. The other thing is, through my network with HBCUs, and just because I say HBCUs, like 65%, HBCUs are pretty diverse. So 65% of the folks at an HBCU self-identify as Black. 35% is everybody else. So people, but part of that is, think about, with the opportunity, we love to reverse engineer. What I mean by that, there are a ton of kids that are from Boston and those areas that there is no HBCU there. So they go down to Cheney. So they're leaving where they are. They're in Atlanta, they're et cetera. The thing is, knowing there's an opportunity back home, it's magic. So what we do, if you've got those types of jobs, we'll send it to the deans and say, hey, you know what, there's a job in Vermont. Do you know any? And so the dean's not going to send over 100 kids. He's going to say, oh, yeah, there's 3 kids from Vermont. So you see what I'm saying? You really focus down to where they know. And also because of the relationship they may have, they may say, hey, you know what? Fields is not from Vermont, but we know his grandmother lives there. Oh, you see what I'm saying? So now, guess what? Housing may not be that tough for the kid because trust me, grandma's gonna let him stay there. Trust me, if he's got a job, grandma's gonna let you. So part of that is now having the opportunity to be real, and then getting it into those sectors where now, okay, based on your alumni pool or based on who you know, are there folks that would be open to these opportunities? What I think is going to happen with those opportunities is that the schools would say, hey, would somebody from that company speak to my students? That's where the magic is, right? So every Wednesday there's the entrepreneur, there's business day. So now, hey, there's 10 jobs here, and we're gonna have a representative from this industry speak about these jobs. That's where the magic starts. Because now you're building a relationship. Now you're building a pipeline, and you're not just going in and grabbing a kid and you run off. No, now you're building a pipeline. That's where the magic is. So it takes some work, but that's where you start to build that relationship where, guess what? Every kid from Boston that hits the campus, the president's telling them about, okay, in 4 years, if you do this, there's a great opportunity for you. That's where you're planting the seed, and that's where that thing that it gets traction, and that's where you're starting to find the people are actually recruiting for you. Everybody doesn't do it that way. It's sort of like I'll throw it on Indeed, or I'll throw it on Monster with the 20 billion other jobs. Okay, that may work. But when you go in and you're very intentional, I think Michelle said that the intentionality kind of shows people that, okay, even if I have a question about this job, is there somebody I could talk to? Yeah, I just connected with the guy on LinkedIn. You see, I just connected on LinkedIn. Let me shoot him a note. Where would I live? Where could I go to church? Could those types of things now start to get sticky around your opportunities?
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Fields. And thank you, Michelle. I do see, that we are at time now, but I want to say again, we appreciate the thought leadership, the kind of action really that you both are taking in your spheres and this one as well, to drive systems change, which is really what this is. So thank you all so much for sharing your insights and your examples and resources. Again, everyone who's joined this session, if you all are interested, please do reach out to Fields and Michelle on LinkedIn, and there are other contact pieces that we'll make sure that we provide for you all after this session. And with that, I'll hand it on over to Mary Ann to provide closing remarks. Thank you, Fields and Michelle.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Fields and Michelle. I love the energy that you both bring to your work, and sharing that with us. I feel personally rejuvenated, even in this later afternoon hour, and I thank you for that. And just helping us to see how two very different approaches, one community-based, one college-based, can make it work. So though you don't have to see any barriers to making it work, you work within what you are living in or what the situation is, and you work from there. And you two have shown that greatly. I thank you. And Jessica, thank you too for making the session work today. And Fields, sorry about all the Fields Jacksons on the call today. Hopefully that issue will not get repeated tomorrow. But we wanted to just thank everyone who has attended, our sponsors. You can still visit our sponsor exhibit hall. I'm posting the link to that right now in the chat. And also, we hope to see you all tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye for now. Bye-bye.